Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Planning Board here in the city of Birmingham. Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. Could we please call the roll?
Yes, just a couple notes. Welcome back, everyone. I don't need locations anymore. We'll be returning to voice votes unless roll call votes are called for by the chair or unless a board member is attending remotely. And all speakers need to be in front of a microphone when they're speaking. So now I'm going to call the roll. Scott Klein.
I am present.
Robin Boyle.
Here.
George Jeffries.
Here.
Bert Kosek.
Here.
Daniel Scher. Brian Williams.
Present.
Janelle Boyce. Jason Emmer.
Here.
Nazim Ryan.
Here.
Daniel Murphy. Jane Weinman.
All right, we are quorum. Let's move along to review and approval of the minutes from the meeting on June 23rd. Any comments, corrections, regrets? Mr. Williams.
Page 2 of the minutes. Under my comments, I think it's line 3, he exhorted. I don't even know what that word means, but I believe he requested that the city resolve. So delete exhorted and 2 and insert requested that the city resolve.
Okay. Any other comments or corrections? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
Second, but I think my microphone's not working. Is that possible?
It is working.
It is?
They're all working.
Are
Wonderful.
they?
Yeah, we can.
So we have a second by Mr. Kozik. Any conversation about the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
One abstention, Mr. Emmert. Chairperson's comments. So we're back to a regular meeting, but I got to tell you, after about 16 months, this feels anything but regular. I'm used to 2 monitors, and I'm wearing like adult clothes, and I'm actually out. So forgive me as I'm looking around the room a lot. It's not that I'm paranoid. It's just that we got people all over the place. We will do our best with the technology tonight for those of you on still on Zoom and watching from home, but hey, cut us some slack. We've got a split agenda tonight with both some study session items later and then a couple of site plan items which will go first. Jana, is there any change to the agenda as published?
No, there is not.
No, there is not. Wonderful. Well, let us move right into it. And the first item on the agenda is the special land use permit review and accompanying final site plan and design review for 300 and 394 South Old Woodward and several other properties. As I have done in the past, I will be recusing myself from this tonight. There is a good chance that there would be a perception of a conflict of interest on this due to a business association. So rather than drag the applicant through anything like that, I will recuse myself and stay out of the mix for this. Mr. Williams, would you take the gavel?
Thrilled again. Thank you. So before we start this, I want to make sure the board is comfortable with dealing both item E1, which is the special land use permit review, and F1, final site plan and design review at the same time. When we get to them by motion, we'll have to do them separately, but I see no reason why we shouldn't combine the review. Is that acceptable? Okay, I see heads nodding. One item that I would simply ask Jana, I know we've had a brief conversation, I would tell the applicant, we've had several meetings on this project. So the first thing I want Jana to do when I turn over the mic to her is to summarize what the city commission did on Monday night to bring everybody up to date on the board and in the audience. And then secondly, to concentrate the comments on the differences between the preliminary site plan, which was approved, and the final site plan, and particularly emphasizing whatever changes, if any, that have been made. And of course, now we will be required to get into the economic development liquor license issues, so we'll hear from a new voice in the audience at that point. Okay? Jana, if you want to bring everybody up to date on City Commission action 2 days ago before we start.
Yes, on Monday evening, July 12th, the City Commission did hear the request for rezoning from B2 and D3 to B2 and D4 in the downtown overlay district. And they heard the request to amend the appendix, the map for economic development licenses, that's Exhibit 1 in the appendix section of the zoning ordinance. So RH was successful in getting the rezoning from D3 in the overlay to D4 with a special condition that it be tied to the plans and 4 stories be the maximum as per the plans that would be finally approved by the city, which of course, as you know, include 4 stories and 69 feet. So that was what was approved for the rezoning. And then with regards to the amendment to Exhibit 1 of the zoning ordinance, they did also vote to approve to add this property as one of the properties that's qualified to obtain an economic development license, if in fact they go through the site plan and SLUP process through the planning board and the city commission.
Thank you. Okay, without further delay, Jana, why don't you highlight?
Okay, well, to give you an idea, just to note some of the changes, there was an issue at preliminary where the building size was off a little, the number of loading spaces, so they have finalized the size of the building. It's 49,624 square feet in size, which means that it does not require 3 loading spaces, it only requires 2. They do have those 2. They're mostly within the building. Part of it extends out into the outside of the building, but it is surrounded by plantings on either side. All of the uses that are proposed are the same. We still have RH and the gallery uses on floors 1, 2, and 3. And then for 4th floor is the restaurant that is primarily glass on that upper level. That is proposed to have an economic development liquor license to serve beer and wine. I'll get into that a little bit further in a little while. With regards to the dumpsters, they're still in the same place. They're in back of house, sort of in the middle of the building, fully screened. They still have 24 parking spaces in the lower level of the underground parking. They have 1 barrier free. They have moved the valet to the south end of the property, the block on Old Woodward, as you can see up on the screen. They have 5 on-street spaces proposed, plus the valet to the south. That was at the request of the police department, who thought it would be safer in case there was queuing issues there. And all of the streetscape along South Old Woodward, it's primarily the same. They've changed it barely, just as a result of moving around that valet. But I do want to point out again, as I did at preliminary, that all of that streetscape along South Old Woodward is subject to change because it has to be consistent with what the city ultimately approves for phase 3 of the South Old Woodward project. So in terms of the plantings and the planters and where those planters go and where the street lights go and so on will be subject to final review and approval of the plans by the city. So what you see now with regards to the streetscape, you do see the required street trees along South Old Woodward and Brown Street, 1 every 40 feet. That's how you get the number. They have met all of those requirements in terms of the number of trees. Again, the species might change along South Old Woodward depending on what is finalized for phase 3 of the whole streetscape project. The street lights that are proposed as required along Brown and South Old Woodward, they are not required along Danes. Also along Danes, there's not enough room to accommodate street trees. We talked about this at preliminary. They do need to obtain a waiver from the city arborist. I haven't seen that yet, although maybe I've missed it. In any event, there's not enough room for them, so I'm quite certain that that waiver will be granted. And as I mentioned at preliminary, they are proposing 3 trees in that courtyard area that's located at the southeast corner of the site. So while they're not considered street trees because they're on private property, they have pushed them along the edge of the sidewalk, so it does help to create that street wall that we want to see with the plantings and the trees. With regards to setback and height and all of those issues, everything is pretty much the same. The setbacks are the same. The height is the same. As I mentioned, it's 69 feet is the maximum overall height, and with the rezoning that was granted on Monday night, that does meet the requirement. Mechanical equipment, they have provided more detail with regards to the mechanical equipment on the roof. Actually, I'll give you the clean roof plan. And this just shows you the units that they're proposing air makeup handlers, condensing units, energy recovery units, and 8 exhaust fans, all of which they did provide the spec sheets for. They were in your packet. They're all provided to be 4 to 6.5 feet in height, and the parapet screen wall that goes around that mechanical area. There's 2 of them. You can see it's clustered in this end and this end of the building. This is the glass area that's under roof for the restaurant on the 4th floor. These are outdoor areas that are proposed with some furnishings and some landscaping. The parapet itself is over 7 feet tall, so it will be sufficient to screen all of the rooftop units. The issue that I did call out last time that remained as of the writing of this report is with regards to the landscaping and what was shown around this transformer at this end of the site, the north end. There was no mention as to what these plantings were. They have added that they're Paxandria, but that's a ground cover, low lying, so it wouldn't be sufficient to screen the transformer. So they would be required to do arborvitae or something else taller and evergreen on those sides, on all sides basically of the transformer, because it's visible from the street. I did talk to the applicant about that. They're more than happy to provide those plantings and switch them out as required. With regards to the landscaping, we didn't go through it in too much detail, I don't think, last time. Essentially, the only landscaping required on this site is for the street trees and the mechanical screening, which I've already gone through. All of the other landscaping that you see on this site is proposed, is not required, but is definitely going to add to the beauty of the site. They are proposing extensive plantings along the north elevation, also along the south elevation, primarily confined to this corner here, where there's an outdoor courtyard area. We did talk about that quite a bit at preliminary, if you recall. They're proposing an open wrought iron fencing with some brick pillars and plantings in that area. Along the west side of the building, they're proposing the creation of a new pedestrian via, and the building would open up onto that pedestrian via. The layout of the building is primarily the same as last time. You see there's entrances on all 4 sides of the building. All of them lead into a central grand lobby, I guess, if you want to call it. You can talk to the architects when that comes up. But you can see straight through the building. So they do want to create those sight lines, and they do have a focus feature in the middle here of the building. So along this west pedestrian via, it isn't public property, but it is a via. It does meet the width requirements for people to be able to travel through there, and the ADA requirements. You can see that they're proposing a seating area outside in that zone. The parking or the property line is right here. I don't know if you can see it. It's a little hard to see, but one thing I pointed out at preliminary, any approval tonight would cover anything that is on this site, which is the 300 to 394 South Old Woodward, the new site that was created when they split off one parcel, split off another, switched them, combined them. That whole new parcel's all said and done as well. This landscaping that is proposed on the adjacent neighbor's site, RH is definitely willing and able to put that in, but they would have to obtain approval. I believe they intend to ask if you would be amenable to administrative approval of that request, but it would be a separate application. It's not covered in the site plan review tonight. Couple of other notes on the plantings. There are some shrubs that are noted in this courtyard area here and also along the rear that they just don't mention what they are, so we would need to verify what type of shrubs they are so that we can verify that they're not on the prohibited species list. Well, I talked about the streetscape a little bit, but just to go into the sidewalk widths, on South Old Woodward, they're 14.5 feet with 8 foot at its narrowest point pedestrian path along there, again, subject to change. On Dane Street, they're 6.6 feet in width, which, as I mentioned, is a bit small for trees and lighting. 7.5 feet walkable area along Brown Street. They do have pedestrian entrances from all of those public sidewalks to get into the building. They've also noted the streetscape street lights on here. They did not note that they would have the hanging baskets, but they are going to, the applicant has committed to include the brackets so the city can come along and put the hanging baskets with the flowers every year as we do throughout the downtown. You can see in the streetscape again, they do have some benches trash cans, there's a bench here, a trash can, some bike racks, at a couple of different locations, and those are proposed. There's also bike parking underneath in the underground level for bicycle storage for employees or what have you. Again, those are subject to change. I don't think that they will change in this area on Brown Street, because I believe that will be outside of the city's streetscape area. With regards to parking, we went through this in detail last time. They're located in the parking assessment district, so they're not required to provide parking for any retail, restaurant, or commercial uses. That being said, they're providing the 24 parking spaces in the underground level, plus there'll be 5 immediately adjacent to the site on South Old Woodward. The 24 spaces proposed in the lower level of the garage, they do state that those will be primarily used for valet parking only, so it'll be their valets that'll be going down there. And they've indicated that in fact, with the valet use, they could in fact stack more than 24 cars down there if needed. They've also indicated that they don't have large groups or destination type weddings, baby showers, anything like that at their store, that it's people coming and going at different times of the day and night, so you don't get large crowds gathering and leaving at the same time. The entrance into that underground parking level is off of Dane Street here. It's a 21-foot wide opening, so it is sufficient. The underground parking level, the layout that's proposed does have some variation in terms of the drive widths. 21.5 feet down to 13.5 feet, which is rather narrow, certainly in this last corner here, which is sort of the dead end zone. The engineering department, as I get into in a few minutes, has indicated that they would like to see some more detail to make sure that's going to be enough. As I stated though, the primary users of this lower level will be the valet, so they'll be intimately familiar with how this works and how they can get in and get out. I believe I already talked about the loading spaces too, the pedestrian entrances directly accessible from sidewalks. With regards to the lighting, they have submitted a photometric plan, and there are a couple of things that I noted in the report for the photometric plan. One, it shows this double-headed fixture here, which I didn't see any description of it on the photometric plan or in the chart or in any of the paperwork. So that, I talked to the applicant, that's just a leftover from a previous project. It's not proposed here. The other thing I would note is that the photometric plan here shows the street lights, the sconces that they're proposing on the exterior of the building, as well as the in-ground lighting. One thing I would note that in the plans that were submitted last week, there was an update also that showed the materials. Hold on one second. Remember the page. 53. It showed a light in any event that that was different than this recessed, I call it a pot light. I understand there's different names for it, but a little different than that. And the one that was shown on the drawings here actually looked like, well, they called it Night Star 2 LED. And if they in fact plan to use that, we would want to see the wattage of that fixture. I'm assuming that perhaps they're meant to be in lieu of these recessed pot lights. But I would ask the applicant to clarify that. No, I don't know where it's disappearing to. But in any event, so that's the lighting that's proposed. The sconces that are proposed on the building themselves are custom fixtures that are proposed by RH, and they're designed for them. You can just see them here. There's 2 on either side of all of the exits and entrances, so 8 around the building as a whole. They have provided the specification cut sheets on them, the custom plans that were in your packet. The only comment with regards to the lighting, one, the fixtures, the photometric plan includes the street lights, which does show then that their light levels at the property line or 5 feet from the property line are a little high in the vicinity of the street lights. I have advised the applicant they're not required to include the city street lights on the photometric and have asked them to revise that. My guess is that once the street lights are taken out of those light levels, that they will comply with the 1.5 foot candle maximum limit at the property line, or 5 feet out in this case. So I would ask that they provide that before they go to the city commission. Also, the landscape lighting and the uplighting that's proposed around the building. I'll put up the elevation, but I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with it from last time. Oh, where did the pretty pictures go? Okay, well, I'll put up the streetscape that shows these three here, that shows the building. What they're proposing is the in-grade lighting that will be shining up on the building and up on the landscaping itself to highlight the architectural details of the building. They are not cut-off style fixtures, neither are the sconces, the custom sconces that are proposed, but the planning board does have the ability to provide an exception to that standard if one of 5 or 6 items are met, not all of them, but one or more of them. And I think that it could potentially fall under lighting design for architectural enhancement of the building features, i.e. architectural enhancement, etc. I do think that it's also that the scale, color, design, and material of the luminaries will enhance the site on which it's located, as well as be compatible with the surrounding buildings or neighborhood. I also believe that you may consider the luminaire to be neither obtrusive nor distracting, nor create a traffic hazard, so should you wish to approve that exception for those lights, you could. That is part of your draft motion, should you decide to do that. With regards to the departmental reports, I do have the engineering comments today, and they had basically the same comments that were made at the preliminary site plan. Again, they reiterate our comments that all of the streetscape plans have to be in compliance with what the city and ultimately ends up approving along there. They must show the existing mast arm traffic signal pole at the corner of Brown and South Woodward, and note that it's to be maintained and protected during construction. They should show the proposed sewer service size and plan to tap the existing 36-inch sewer on Brown Street, not the 8-inch sewer as shown on the plan. The applicant has agreed to do that. They've indicated that the additional curb may need to be removed on Dane Street to accommodate the proposed drive approach and appropriately transition to the sidewalk while meeting ADA grading requirements. The applicant's aware of that. That's where the vehicular entry comes in. You have to have the ramping, and the ADA has to meet all of the slope requirements of the ADA. Also, they indicate, as I mentioned earlier, the parking lot aisles. They wanted a little more information on those in the basement to make sure. They state that there were no measurements provided, but I did scale it, so those measurements I provided were taken from the scaled plans. They state, lastly, 2 things. The existing private storm drainage system is shown to be utilized after completion of the proposed development. The size of the storm sewers and how they are configured must be shown on the plans, which they were not. And lastly, they state that since this is in the GWK drainage district, the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner is looking to upgrade some of the requirements, so they don't know what that'll be at this time, but should new requirements come in, then additional requirements may be imposed on this development if it isn't built by then. The Department of Public Services, they also reiterated that the streetscape has to match what the city ultimately ends up approving along South Old Woodward. They also state that coordination with the city must include all plant material, irrigation installation, where we tell them, power outlet installation, and any streetscape furnishings such as benches and trash receptacles. And that's, again, to make sure that it matches what the city is proposing to build. Fire department's comments were contained in the report. We talked about a lot of these at preliminary. They need a fire command room. The fire department connections where they want it has to be within 100 feet of a fire hydrant. They need full fire suppression installation, fire pump installation, emergency generator installation, CO2 gas detection system for the parking ground level, emergency responder radio amplification to make sure that the radio will work throughout the building, all the way at the top and all the way underground. They indicate they need a staircase to the roof for access, not a hatch. They want a Knox box to be installed, a standpipe system, and a Knox remote power box for emergency power shutoff to be included as well. The police department did not have any concerns with the proposed building, nor did the building department, who did review the plans as well. So to go through a design review Let me go to the elevations. You'll note that there's a few changes in the materials from the report versus the plans. What the applicant is proposing with regards to materials, they're still proposing a gray brick. They've changed the gray brick from a slate gray velour to a Mora gray, which I think you have a sample of that. If you can pass it around, that would be great. They have removed the basalt stone that was previously proposed and replaced it with modeled stucco in a gray color. Got that too? You're doing a great job. They're proposing Hope steel windows and doors in black with sunscreens on all the windows. That hasn't changed. Black metal awnings and railings. That hasn't changed. Clear glazing on all the windows on the building, except for some of the glass on the rooftop level, which is the 4th floor, that's stepped back. And I'll have the architect talk to you a little bit about that and why they are proposing some level of tinting up there on the roof. As you know, with a design review, we generally go through all of the materials. We look at the downtown Birmingham 2016 plan, the downtown overlay architectural standards to make sure all of those have been met, and they have met all of those requirements. The only one that I noted in the report was that they hadn't provided the glazing calculations for each facade that faced a street. They have now provided that, and they do meet all the requirements, no more than 35% on the upper floors, and they have a minimum of 70% on the first floor. The west elevation doesn't have the same standards because it doesn't face a street, but it has to be at least 30% glazing on the first floor, which it is. So they do meet all of the glazing standards. Some of the other architectural standards outlined in the downtown Birmingham overlay district, you want to have first floor storefronts, which they do, the glazing, which we discussed, all storefronts directly accessible from the sidewalks, the storefront windows and other windows vertically proportioned on the building. The railings and balconies are made of metal, which is required. There are no blank walls facing a public street on any side, even on the back side, so to speak, that faces the public or the pedestrian via. And buildings are required to have architectural interest that adds a pedestrian scale to the building for people that are walking along the street to create a walkable environment. They are certainly proposing that with all of their storefront glazing, the entrances on each of the sides of the building, their canopies, the sunscreen, the plantings, etc. Building right up to the street, of course, creates a walkable environment. It creates that street wall, and it provides the kind of massing that the 2016 plan also looked for. The 2016 plan calls for a mix of uses with first floor retail, which this has, as well as a mix of uses throughout the building. And it calls for significant massing at this corner. Obviously, it's one of the key corners in downtown. It has tall buildings to the east, has a 5-story Daxton to the north, the 3-story forefront to the south. And I'll just put that picture back up that shows you again the step down, which I know we talked about this a lot at preliminary, but this is the Daxton. This is the proposed building at 69 feet. And here's the forefront at 51 feet. This one's at 80. Obviously, with the City Commission approving the rezoning from D3 to D4 on Monday night, that height has been taken into consideration and has been approved. Let's see. The proposed uses and the details on the building, as I said, do relate to the pedestrian, so there is a human scale detailing, which is exactly what we want. The building will improve the visual appearance of the area by creating a denser, more compact environment and getting rid of a couple of surface parking lots that are already there, which create that empty gap within the facade and the streetscape of the downtown. With regards to signage, they are proposing some signage. It's very minimal. I have to zoom in pretty far for you to see it. It will be deemed building identification signage. Now, it appears, as I mentioned in the report, that it's engraved into the wall itself. If that is not the case, the applicant will have to provide that information because I don't have any other details. Because it's building identification sign, it cannot be lit without a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. I just point that out. Essentially, they're proposing 17.5 square feet of signage on all sides of the building, which is well under the 166 square feet that they're allowed to have, given their frontage along South Old Woodward. So now I'll get into some of the selection criteria for economic development licenses. A little bit more about the restaurant.
Jana, before we start that,
Yes.
are there any board questions on what I would call site plan and design review for Jana?
Janet, on the glazing, I'm just curious. I'm always wondering on this. Second floor is
You go.
35%.
No more than 35%
No more.
for upper floors.
Can you put that picture back up? I'm just curious. This may be a learning experience for me.
Oh, this will be something I'm sure the architect will want to discuss with you, because
'Cause-
what the ordinance says is no more than 35%, and it doesn't define where you have to set that floor level per each
All right.
row. So you can actually include everything from here all the way up to the top of the building for those upper floors.
Okay. Because I mean, if I just look at the second floor
I
versus
know.
the first floor, I'm not seeing half. And I love the building. I don't want to. But okay. All right. That was a.
Robin?
Similar question. The windows and the balconies, are they real? Do the windows all open and can you walk out onto the balconies?
I understand the windows all open, and whether you can walk out on the balconies, not
They
sure.
are
You have to,
essentially-
Victor, you have to speak in.
Introduce yourself.
Victor Soroki, architects for the project. They are essentially French balconies, so there's a small projection. The doors are all the Hope's doors and windows. They do open to the interior, so they're all operable. And RH does like to open them on days like today, where you get the very nice breeze and indoor-outdoor feel.
Other questions? Okay, let's keep going then.
Okay, with regards to the economic development license, as I mentioned, they're proposing that restaurant on the fourth floor, which is now permitted as a result of the city commission's decisions on Monday night. They're proposing to call it the RH Cafe. You saw there was a menu that was, or at least a sample menu included in your packet, includes breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They are proposing to have that restaurant open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. until 9 p.m. That includes the outdoor dining as well as the indoor dining. When we get to that, I will mention that there are approximately 122 seats inside upstairs, though I understand that they've been finalizing those numbers, so I'll leave that to the applicant to address. Then there's also some outdoor seating, some of which has table service, some of which is more of a lounge area for people to just go and relax or look at the furniture, because all of the furnishings are for sale. With regards to the restaurant itself, Chapter 10 of the alcoholic liquors section of the city code does set out certain requirements that have to be met in order for the city to consider granting an economic development license under a special land use permit. Economic development licenses are permitted, of course, as we mentioned, in the downtown overlay, and only in those areas that are shown on the map, which was also amended on Monday to include this property. The selection criteria for the economic development license, there are numerous criteria. I'll go through them one at a time. The most important thing, I think, the major point, is that the applicant must demonstrate a substantial investment in the city. And Chapter 10 alcoholic liquors defines a substantial investment as anything, a project that results in a 500% increase in assessed value post-development over the pre-development assessed value, or an investment of more than $10,000, whichever is less.
10 million.
Or 10,000. 10 million, thank you, $10 million, whichever is less, to be substantial. Of course, the city commission does have discretion to look at those numbers and see if they're not quite met, to potentially allow them. In this case, that is definitely not of concern. The applicant has submitted a detailed application, which includes an economic impact statement that was contained in a letter dated February 24th of 2021, which is in your packet. In there, the applicant has stated that the value of the building will be at least $25 million, so it certainly hits that threshold of $10 million that is required and deemed to be a substantial investment in the city. The next criteria, we have to look at the applicant's demonstrated ability to finance the proposed project. The applicant's economic development or economic impact statement states that RH is a publicly traded company, and they have a demonstrated ability to finance the project internally. One other thing I want to mention with regards to the economic impact statement they submitted, they also talked about the number of jobs that would be created. Obviously, they clearly hit that significant investment limit or threshold. They've also stated that the proposed development will create 130 new permanent positions between the retail and restaurant operations that are proposed. Further, that the construction itself will bring several hundred construction jobs to the city while the building is under construction. We also have to look at the applicant's track record with the city, including responding to city and/or citizen concerns. Obviously, RH is proposed to be a newcomer to the city of Birmingham. However, I will state that at least during this lengthy application process, when we've gone back and forth with them, they have certainly provided us with everything that we need, and any concerns have been addressed through changes to the plans. Next criteria is whether the applicant has an adequate site plan to handle the proposed liquor license activities. I think, we went through a full preliminary site plan, we went through a CIS, we went through now the final site plan review discussion. I think it's pretty clear they do have the infrastructure available, water, sewer, trash collection, etc., to handle the proposed operation, and an adequate site plan to handle the proposed liquor license activities on the top and to dispose of all of the trash that comes from that as well. Also, the applicant noted that they have a long history of successfully operating similar facilities across the country with similar site plan and similar health and sanitary facilities. The next criteria, we have to look at the establishment's location in relation to the determined interest in development. I already touched on that. They're located in the downtown Birmingham overlay district, which is one of the areas that the city has stated they have an interest in attracting more restaurants with liquor licenses. And this is within the overlay district, and again, also added to the economic development map as of Monday night. 3 more criteria. The extent to which the cuisine offered by the applicant is represented in the city. You can see by the menu that they have breakfast, lunch, and dinner offerings. I think it's artisan type, gourmet type foods and good pairings of different foods and wines that are proposed to be served. The applicant states that the menu shows all of the type of cuisine that's offered, but is a very unique concept that can't be found otherwise in the city of Birmingham right now, because it's a large retail establishment with on-site dining, and the ability to stroll through the galleries with the beverage of your choice creates a new experience-based retail destination that we can't find anywhere else in downtown Birmingham. Then we also have to look at the percentage of proceeds from the sale of food products as compared to the sale of alcoholic beverages. The applicant has stated that it's roughly equal, so about 50-50 food versus alcohol. They also further state that the revenue generated from the food and drink will be minimal compared to the revenue from the retail sales of furniture and home decor on the site. Lastly, we have to look at whether the applicant has outstanding obligations to the city, such as owing property taxes, water bills, etc. The applicant has no known outstanding obligations to the city at this time. So the recommendation for the board, should you decide to take action tonight, is to consider recommending approval of the final site plan and design review to the City Commission for this site, which is 300 to 394 South Old Woodward and a portion of 294 East Brown Street, with the following conditions. You could strike the first 2 that are contained in your agenda packet because they were granted on Monday night. So the conditions would be as such: the applicant update the landscape plan to provide species and size details on all proposed plantings, provide material specifications on hardscape items, and obtain a waiver for the required street trees on Danes prior to City Commission review. The applicant is required to receive separate planning approval for all landscaping changes proposed on the adjacent site. 3, all streetscape elements must be coordinated with and consistent with the design plans the city has for the streetscape on South Old Woodward. 4, the applicant must obtain approval of the police department and/or city commission for the valet operation that they are proposing on that south end of the block on South Old Woodward. 5, the applicant must submit all light fixture and mechanical equipment specification sheets, which they have. So all that's left is a revised photometric that removes the city street lights from there to make sure that all of the lighting requirements are met. 6, the planning board can decide whether you wish to approve the use of non-cutoff fixtures to enhance the architecture of the building. 7, the applicant comply with the requirements of all departments. Then we have separate motion language with regards to the special land use permit. The recommendation is that you consider recommending approval to the city commission for the special land use permits with, permit with only 2 conditions, the first 2 being struck as a result of the commission's decision on Monday night. And the 2 remaining, 1, the applicant comply with the requests of all departments, and 2, the applicant execute an agreement with the city for the use of an economic development liquor license with a special land use permit. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I do want to point out that I do have some additional information too. I do have the Hardscape Elements. If you bear with me for a minute, I will pull them up. They have provided some of that with regards to the pavers that they're proposing. This is probably where I saw the different light fixture in here. Yep. Okay, this is the light fixture that I was referring to when I discussed the photometrics. This one was not shown on the photometric plan, but the recessed pot lights were, so I'm assuming this is in lieu of the pot lights, unless they're the same thing. They did not appear to be. Here's the samples of the materials that were passed around tonight, and here we have the paver that I was talking about here, and they have provided some details on the furnishings and the fabrics that'll be used on the furnishings, the plantings, and the chandeliers that they're proposing throughout the space. Yes, sir.
I want to ask a couple questions on the recommendation number 2, which is the applicant required to receive separate planning approval for all landscaping changes proposed to the adjacent site. So that's technically not within the site plan tonight.
It's not.
And there was discussion Monday night, which I viewed, that it's not clear to me that the property to the west is going to permit access to valet without a gate. And that would have to come to us. So I'm going to make it clear, until that issue is resolved, I don't think we should, as a board, delegate administrative approval on that issue until the valet issue is resolved, and the usage of the property, if any, to the west is resolved. And that would mean both the landscaping and the valet, to me, would have to come back to us
Okay.
at the same time. That's my thought. I don't know how the board feels about that, but we have historically not viewed with significant favor the erection of gates in access to property. I do understand the concern of the property owner to the west and the need for gates in light of the development in that area and the fact that people are using their parking lot. So, but I think that ought to come back to the board
Well,
with the landscaping.
okay, just a few comments. As a result of that discussion that occurred on Monday night, the applicant did provide a revised valet operations map and route to me this morning, and it's what's up on the screen now. They do still feel that they'll be able to resolve this issue with the adjacent property owner. The person that was speaking on Monday, of course, was not the property owner.
Right, I know.
But in any event, they have a secondary plan, or maybe even a primary plan
I
now.
would say that's now the primary
Yeah.
plan, to use the commercial streets. So
Right. So
Victor
here-
can talk about, why don't we let Victor talk
Okay.
about that?
Okay, will do.
Because he mentioned it Monday night, and I think the secondary plan is the primary. We don't really get into that other than
Correct.
saying the city commission is
Correct.
going to approve it. So I don't, let's hold off on that until the board has other questions or comments. Anything else for Jana before we let the applicant speak?
Probably a better question for the applicant
Okay.
anyway.
Victor, why don't you take the mic? You can address the valet issue at some point.
If you want me to put it on a particular page, just let me know.
Thank you, Jenna. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Victor Soroki. We are the architects for this RH project. Obviously, we're very excited to be here at this stage because this is an exciting project. And along with me is my son Alex. We have some of our architects also on Zoom. Also with us tonight is Michael Avalone, who is an architect with RH. He came in from Corte Madera, California, just outside of San Francisco. Michael works on many of the projects throughout the country, and we've been working closely with Michael, Steve Sebastian, who is his superior, and of course Gary Friedman, who is the chairman and CEO for RH. Also with me is my attorney team, or our attorney team. Rick Radner, the zoning expert, and Kelly Allen, who handles the SLUP and the liquor license applications. Also tonight we have on the Zoom call is Michael Duell, who is the landscape architect, and I know he's available to answer questions as well. I'm assuming you're seeing him on the screen, but he's supposed to be.
Yes, I can put it back if you
No,
want.
that's okay. I'm just, we don't have to go to him yet. We'll see how we're doing. Obviously, Jana does a very thorough review, and per the chairman's request, we will not go over things we've previously reviewed and approved. We'll move forward with any changes and anything that's appropriate for tonight's discussion. Obviously, this is a significant and important proposal because it's not often that we can get a retail anchor destination of this scale and this magnitude in the city, which is exciting. I think we all know this building fits very comfortably in the overall site. And the uses haven't changed from what was initially proposed, so I won't go through any of that, nor have the square footages or the underground parking. Jana is also showing some additional renderings of the building, but maybe we can talk a little bit about materials because now we're in for final site plan approval. The building is primarily still a brick building, and we passed around the brick sample. It's a gray brick, this Mora grease gray. It's an interesting brick because if you looked at it closely, it's a Norman brick, which is a longer, thinner brick. It's a unique brick because it's different, and it has range in it. It's a fairly tight brick, but there is flashes of iron spots also in it. When I say range, there's subtle colors within it. And we're using a gray colored grout as well, or mortar. So it's a very, this presentation and what RH likes to do with their buildings is it's a very simple, elegant, monochromatic palette. The other major material is stucco. They refer to it often as Venetian plaster. You saw the sample being passed around. It's real Portland cement stucco. It's about 1.5 inches thick. It's not an EFIS type system at all. It is hand rubbed to give it that smooth finish, and it's modeled, so you get a little bit of texture out of that. Early on in the proposal, we had a stone element proposed. The more we got into the discussions with Gary Friedman and their design team, they like it simple. They wanted the brick to stand out, and so they said, let's just keep it brick and stucco. And then, of course, what they like to use on all of their buildings is hopes, windows, and doors, which are premium steel and glass system. The top atrium roof area is also a black metal frames. And there are large nano wall systems, also a steel and glass system that allows the sort of folding and stacking doors that you see now used commonly. And the combination of all of these beautiful French doors in the Hopes windows or the nano wall system gives this building a very dynamic indoor-outdoor effect. If you've been to an RH gallery and you've been there while the weather is nice, a day like today, those doors would be open, the air would be flowing through the galleries. It's just a very warm, comfortable feeling. And then, of course, the feature space at the top where the restaurant is, that also has a very dynamic indoor-outdoor feeling. Large trees, a fountain. These trees are fig trees, chandeliers their chandeliers. Obviously, all of the furnishings throughout the space in the galleries. as well as the furnishings in the restaurant and the rooftop are all RH furnishings, naturally. And so it's an opportunity then for them to display their product line. And for, you know, what has been very successful for RH is this sort of immersive retail experience. It's like it's a lifestyle, and it's a brand that they have. And when you go to their building, you become immersed in it. All of the senses are amplified, and it's just a beautiful experience, from having a great meal to a glass of wine to walking around and enjoying the furnishings and the beauty of it. The rooftop is largely a green rooftop. By the way, the one light fixture that Jana was a little bit was questioning, we are looking at the in-ground pot lights at the bottom to sort of highlight some of the architectural elements on the facade per the photometrics plan. On the interior materials drawing, we had that small fixture. That actually goes in some of the tree pots and just illuminates the trees, just gives a little bit of light to soften the trees. That's what that fixture is for. And that's primarily on the roof.
You would have to add those into the photometric plan as well, then,
Okay, that is no problem.
which are
'cause they're like
minimal, I
minimal,
understand.
3 watts, I mean, they're like nothing, you know. So that LED lights, that'll be no problem, and we'll update the photometrics plan. Suffice to say that we will agree, I can tell you without a doubt, we will comply with all of the department requirements for streetscape, engineering, et cetera. None of that's a problem. Landscaping, all of that will be updated. Photometrics will be updated. So we'll have that all addressed. I'll let Michael Duell address any landscape issues, but I do want to mention this as it relates to the landscape and our discussion Monday night at the City Commission meeting. There was a discussion. We had a proposal to consider the landscape where you have the valet operation, and I'm going to use my laser pointer. This is where the valet drop-off was intended. It was moved from the north end to the south end per the police department's recommendation, so we didn't have any backup on close to Brown Street. We were going to, and we've talked with Mr. David Trott, who is the owner of this property, and to Mr. John North, who is the CEO of Caldwell Banker. They both were very much in agreement to work with us, and they're still in agreement as of Monday evening and all day yesterday that they're committed to working with us on finding an amicable solution. However, we've got an even simpler solution that we've talked to RH about and they're fine with, and that's this proposal that we're going to present to the City Commission for the final approval. And basically, in a nutshell, the valet operation drop-off will still be here. RH typically has a valet attendance right by the front door, like you would see in any hotel or any restaurant, and they would have a little valet stand. Those attendants would see somebody pull up, they would give them a ticket, they would take their car and go into the underground garage. When it's time to recover your car from the valet operation, instead of driving around, we're saying simply you would give your ticket to the valet attendant. He would tell you to go down the main corridor. Because this is a 4-sided building, you would walk out to the plaza and you would pick up your car either at the edge of the ramp or even in this little landing pad right here. So the cars don't even have to go off-site. We don't have to go around the block. We don't have to go on Big Woodward. It is as immediate and direct as it gets. And we would post a sign saying turn right only or no left turn so that nobody would go towards the neighborhood. And
Left
you would
only.
Just the opposite.
just the opposite.
Left only.
Left only, that's right. So that you're directed to South Old Woodward, and then from there you can go where you want to go. So that is a very easy, simple valet operation. David Trott has been tremendous in this endeavor. Obviously, he participated and cooperated in the lot splits and lot combinations, and we know all of that was done. What I would like to consider is there is this little 10-foot strip of green space along with some seating that is sort of an enhancement for RH. RH is very much interested in 4-sided buildings, very much interested in seating and landscaping and courtyards and green spaces. And we worked this out that they would agree to landscape 10 feet of Mr. Trott's property for their benefit and for the city's benefit to create this sort of a via and this sort of four-sided building. And he has been totally a gentleman about it, and he's fully supporting it. And I just thought, why come back for this little area? You've seen it on the plan from the beginning. It's, that same area is on the plan tonight. If you were comfortable enough, we could, instead of having a formal meeting on it at the planning board level, we could do an administrative submission and Janet could review it. Michael is here to talk about it. I'm here to talk about it. Michael Duell, I should say, and Michael Avalone. But if you have specific questions.
Well, I raised the issue only in the context of whether you were going to use the property to the west for drive-through for valet. If you're not, then I only speak for myself, then having the landscape plan itself and alone looked at administratively, I would be fine with. I was concerned based on Monday night in listening that the proposal was perhaps to erect a gate. I would simply say to the property owner there that if they are interested in that, they've got to come
That's right.
before the appropriate board, and I don't think it's us, and maybe it is, then deal with that separately. But that's up to the board, how they want to
Okay.
look at the landscape thing.
It's my understanding the landscape's not even a requirement.
It's
right?
not.
Right.
Nope.
So it's the
It's above and
streetscape
beyond.
is the required.
Right.
Everything above and beyond it is just
Gratis.
above and beyond. So it's not like we're counting trees or
Right.
calibers or whatever. So I'd be fine with the
Yeah.
administrative approval of that.
Okay, anything else, Victor, you want to go?
Well, thank you. We would appreciate that, yes.
I didn't know you were done. But,
No, that's okay.
Just a question. Jana mentioned there's a 7-foot parapet. I've been to one of these restoration, and it was great to sit up on top and look out. 7 foot. How am I going to look over, or is everything raised up?
She
upstairs?
meant that the
for the
area
mechanicals?
ways for the mechanical equipment, the mechanical equipment is about 6.5 feet tall. Those screen walls are over 7 feet. So you would not see the mechanical equipment, is what she was referring to.
And you'd sit down here.
Yeah, sitting at the rooftop area, the parapets are lower. We have a 42-inch high requirement for rails. So there is rails. The parapets are actually lower than that dimension, and then they're really surrounded by topiary planters. So you will look over them, just as you've probably been to any of the ones that you've been to. This will have the same experience. Obviously, that is important to us, to be able to sit either in the restaurant or sit outside. In the restaurant, it is a fine dining restaurant. I would call it a white tablecloth, even though they don't use tablecloths. They actually have Carrera stone tops. But it's a sophisticated restaurant. It is, for the most part, a simple American cuisine. You can get everything from hamburgers and salads. There's omelets. There's fish dishes. Not complicated at all. And but when you're there, it's just a wonderful experience to be under that skylight, to be in nature with the trees. The fountain is running. It's actually quite nice. And then, of course, on a nice day, it's indoor, outdoor. So we can go through. I know we did submit the materials for the interiors and the restaurant. I don't know if that's important to go through those details tonight. I know I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's all high-quality materials. For the most part, it's what RH does. These are just sort of, if you go to that first page, Jana, just real quick, the one you just passed. I mean, this is just sort of the, that's
sorry.
okay. This is just sort of the table setups, the fountain, banquettes, the stone pavers. The roof is done in a pedestal paver system. They use granite, crushed granite on the ground areas around the courtyard, along with some pavers and around some of those seating areas. These are their chandeliers. Obviously, RH is into all the furnishings, home accessories, chandeliers, rugs. So obviously, they're using all of their products. The topiaries, the planters, these are all theirs as well. And then the next page talks about their furnishings. And again, you could see that even their interior furnishings, and if you've been to an RH, it's a very simple monochromatic palette. I mean, that is their brand, that is their look, and they want that architecture to have that same simplicity, but there's an elegance to it. The building is in the darker gray tones of the brick and the stucco, and of course the black windows and frames. And then these are some of the outdoor furnishings. These are just a representation of some of them. And again, they have different collections. If you've been to the RHs or in the rooftops, you'll see the different collections displayed. That's what Janet was referring to, that some areas have on the outside some outdoor dining, and then of course there's indoor dining in the restaurant. And then there's some of this type of furniture that is more lounge kind of furniture that are really for display, but obviously you could take a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and sit down and relax. Inside, there's about 130 seats inside. The restaurant is pristine. The kitchen is immaculate. Oftentimes, there's parts of the kitchen that you'll see, and that's important to them. And then outside, under these pergola areas here and here, those were added. Those weren't exactly that way in the original, in the preliminary site plan. We had more umbrellas, but they are going with pergolas on the north and south end of this sort of conservatory roof. And that under those pergolas will be some additional seating, about 20 seats on each side for, when the weather permits, for outdoor dining. That's our presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
I think we want to hear from Kelly on liquor license issues. We haven't discussed that at preliminary.
Mr. Chairman, before we go to Kelly, could I raise
Sure.
an issue? This is for both the architects and also Michael, if he's on the Zoom. The quote, park on Danes. I'd just like to learn a little bit more about that space. Fantastic building, excited by it. But I'm just a little bit concerned that this is this sort of second cousin of the building, this area. It's tucked to the edge, it's open, or appears to be. I believe there's a public walkway at where it says 101.9 property boundary. I'm looking at the, I don't know what plan I'm on here. There's so many of them.
Maybe you go to the first floor plan or site plan, Janet?
Yeah, the first floor plan is cool, yeah. So my questions are really, what's the role of this space, number one? Is it for patrons of the building, and if so, can they get in and out the doors there? Secondly, is there public access, and if so, is it controlled in any shape or form? Who is responsible for the management of this park? You can just see in the winter what happens with the wind blowing and the snow and the litter. These are the areas that, you know, they're not upstairs, they're not in the purview of the staff all the time. They're outside. So I'd just like to learn how this particular area will be managed, maintained, controlled,
Sure.
and looked after.
Okay, I will. Janet, could you maybe blow up that area? Can you expand that, this whole, the whole courtyard area?
Which this
At the,
courtyard?
no, at the, I think he's referring more
South
to the
end.
one on
South
by
end.
Danes, this area. Let's just maybe blow that up a little bit.
More?
Oh, we can do a little bit more. That would be great. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, and I will answer your questions, and then if Michael Avalone has anything he wants to add as well. So let me start by saying this. If you've been to any RH around the country, you will see that they are immaculately maintained. Not average, immaculately. 24/7. That is what they take pride in. They are in the design business. They're in the furnishings business. They have architects and designers that work on staff to assist homeowners. They are now even in the landscape business. They are getting into landscape architecture as well. So that's why these green roofs and these courtyards and these plantings are important. And they're important that they don't have small trees, that they start with mature trees and they maintain them. This courtyard is an outdoor space. It is integral to these galleries. You can walk out of these spaces. These doors are open. The courtyard is open throughout. There is additional collections of furnitures that you can sit in and relax and see the furniture. There is a brick and metal wall that is 42 inches high. It has metal pickets and some brick details in this area. And then there's ground covers and plantings and topiaries, but it is open on this side. So on the west end, the public can walk in. But of course, by the way, this is the end where deliveries will come in, and here's our service elevator, and here's our trash room. So the trash is taken out early in the morning, and this is an area for smaller step vans, and then the delivery vehicles are here, and this is the access to the ramp. So there is activity in this space in the morning. When the business opens up, and by the way, RH is from 10 in the morning till 9 at night, 7 days a week. They have people staffed on every floor, and they'll be watching this space and maintaining this space. RH is responsible to maintain it. It's their property. It's their furnishings. You could, on a nice day, walk in and take a look at it without having to go through the store or the galleries, but you could also walk in this way. And actually, you could enter the building from 4 sides. The building is open for people to walk in and enjoy the space. And on a nice day, they'll just prop these doors open. And the building, I think I told you when we first had presented it, design is important to them, symmetry is important to them. And these axes and these views are important. So when you come in through the front door, you're going to look through the whole building, and you're going to see the seatings through the via. And everything is done with symmetry. The elevators are symmetrical to each other. The grand staircase that you walk under is symmetrical to itself and creates this sort of formal, big living room area that you just sort of look through the whole building, and you look through the whole building this way as well. So I think you could be assured that RH is going to take extremely good care of this. It's their property, it's their furniture. It does have outside access from this end. And by the way, if you saw that valet operation plan, this is that, if it's wintertime, this is the gallery or the hall that you would walk through, and you'd pick up your car right here. Or if you were outside, you could walk around the corner and pick up your car, either way. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it was sparked by a similar conversation which we had with a neighboring building. We convinced them to build a really smart alley, which is cool, with lighting on the floor. If you walk along that alley, bang, it comes to a complete and utter dead end. There is a Jersey barrier and the front of cars facing you. So it really doesn't work. So when I was looking at this, I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope we don't end up with another of these very nicely conceived little pathways, vias, movement areas, but it doesn't go anywhere. And you've explained to me how it's going to be used, and I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board before Kelly comes forward?
I have a question. Question. Probably not relevant, just curious, how does this compare in size to
The RH in Chicago or Meatpacking District or in.
This is
the-
smaller.
so it's the
Chicago.
Queen size version.
No, that's okay. Chicago, no, this is not small, but this is still a good size. This is almost 50,000 square feet above ground. Chicago is 60,000 square feet. West Palm Beach, if you've been to that, is 80,000 square feet. This is smaller than New York. Michael, what would you say New York is?
It's about 80,000.
80,000 also.
Okay,
But this is not
okay.
just a stepchild. This is still a significant building.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, Ms. Allen? And in particular, what I'd like you to talk about, particularly for the public, is what kind of liquor license would be obtained and from where?
Got it. Good evening. I am Kelly Allen. I'm here to talk about the liquor license, as the Vice Chair suggests. This board is very familiar with economic development licenses in the city of Birmingham. Don't need to give you the history. For the people at home, we have a quota system in the state of Michigan, which means that for every 1,500 people in the population of a municipality, you're allowed one license. So with the population that Birmingham had and has remained pretty stable over all these years, The city came up with ways to allow, through their zoning ordinances, additional licenses to be brought into the city. For many years, all you had were your quota licenses, and they became very expensive and very hard to work with in terms of smaller, more eclectic restaurants, which is why you developed the bistro ordinance. And then the economic development ordinance was developed to actually do something just like this. Something that is bigger, that doesn't have a seating restriction. Bistros have 65 seats, must be restricted. There is no seating restriction for economic development license. The city has right now, with RH, you would have 5 economic development licenses. You have Whole Foods, you have the Birmingham Pub, you have Hazel and Ravine, and All Seasons, that would be All Seasons, and also approved in the rail district is the one that's not open yet, whose name just went.
Lincoln Yard.
Thank you. Lincoln Yard. Went out of my head. So that's, and it really is done under your ordinances in strict conformance with SLUPs. So it gives the city the ability to not have to go through a major, this is not even a remotely project that would have anything like this, but in order to pull a liquor license from someone, it's a procedure that you have to go through with the state. But because of your zoning ordinances, if a licensee violates the SLUP that you're going to grant pursuant to the Economic Development Ordinance, you can pull that SLUP, and they're not going to be able to operate with a liquor license. The restaurant in this space, as Victor has described, is integral to the whole project. And they do it in all of their locations now, and it is going to be absolutely beautiful. As far as the criteria, Janet did a great job, I think, of going through the criteria. Once we got on the economic development map on Monday, then you switch over to Chapter 10, and you go through the criteria, which Janet has addressed, the substantial investment, the type of cuisine, any outstanding obligations to the city, the ability to finance the project. Those kinds of things are met. In terms of where we get the license, so because you're allowing us to bring in a license from outside of the city, and frankly, there aren't any available inside the city, we have a license under contract that is an Oakland County Class C that did business in Lake Orion, that we have under contract with that seller, and we are filed at the Liquor Control Commission. So we got an investigator today. We're working through that process, and I'm working with RH's hospitality team to bring that license in here pursuant to being placed on the economic development map and being awarded the economic development SLUP.
In terms of the type of liquor being served, this is beer and wine?
So all RH does is wine.
Okay. Just wine.
Oh, a little bit of beer.
Well, that's good.
Okay, so all RH does is wine and a little bit of beer. But they don't do spirits. And so actually the license that we have under contract right now, and you're probably familiar, is called a Tavern license. It's a D classification of a full Class C. They don't do special events. So, they don't, as Victor said, they don't do weddings and corporate events and things like that. So and how will it be used? It will be used in the restaurant, in the spaces that Victor outlined, inside, outside. And then you will be able to take your coffee, your juices, your glass of wine, and stroll through the gallery and look at all the galleries and their furniture and all of the other amazing things that they have in the store. There's only going to be one point of sale, and that will be up on the restaurant level. So it's not going to be every floor is going to have a bar or something like that. It's not a bar. This is to enhance the experience of the retail. So you will see people walking throughout with their glass of wine. And don't spill on any of RH's furniture, please. And we will work with the Liquor Commission to get that entire building licensed so that there isn't any issue with regard to enforcement. The police department will come in and they will know that this entire building is licensed. So people will be able to stroll with their wine. They've been doing this a long time. They're very cognizant about safety issues, minor issues. They've never had any problems anywhere with anything like intoxicated patrons or service of minors or anything like that. I think you'll find that the people that come to RH to shop are not kids, they're adults, and they probably will be interested more in the furniture than in the wine, but it's a nice touch and it's a nice addition.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Allen? Okay, thank you. Any questions of the board at this point? We'll go to the public. If anybody in the public wishes to comment on either final site plan and design or special land use permit issues, now's the opportunity. Mike is here. Is the mic in the back working if he wants to use this? Okay. Introduce yourself.
Idea.
I don't know that they can get camera feed on
Paul,
that
why
one.
don't you come up here and join us then?
Stand there.
Yeah.
My remarks brief. I think you know what I'm going to talk about. It's about cars. Hi, I'm Paul Reagan. I'm one of the people that's been in the neighborhood for many years, and my interests are very much in protecting the neighborhood from commercial incursion, which is seemingly happening repeatedly over time. But I am encouraged, at least in part, to hear the 11th hour solution or Monday night solution to the valet, picking that up mid-building and routing those cars from Danes back directly to Old Woodward. Because as you may be aware, can you put the expanded slide back up, please?
Of this particular page?
Yeah, where we can see the streets. Let's see. This is Purdy right here.
Dames. Dames.
Yeah, he's pointing to the west.
That's
we don't have
Danes,
big enough
right?
pictures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Danes right there.
Yeah, Purdy's off the map, is your point.
Yeah. It's off the map, but that's my concern.
The end of Danes.
Yeah, at the end of Danes there. I'm also concerned about traffic as it comes in. What is this, Brown?
Yes,
Yeah. And this is Old Woodward?
yes.
And right over somewhere in this area, let's see, the Pierce Street deck is up in here, and Peabody's right about over here, right? That's where the cars are going to flow. So there's only about 24 cars coming in and out of here. Now, by my estimates, if we were not in the parking assessment district, there'd be about 227 cars, or at least 227 spaces that would have to be provided for. This is a 4-story building, and to be talking about 24 cars is really missing the point, isn't it? Isn't that missing the point?
Address your comments to the board.
Yeah. The cars that I'm concerned about, and I'd like to hear some discussion about it, is the control of the cars along these pathways here, because each of these laterals is my neighborhood. And then as they come down here, there's going to be a lot of cars going through there. How do they get out without coming through my neighborhood? I'd like to hear that, please.
Well, the traffic is routed from Danes in the valet to South Old Woodward. It doesn't go through Purdy. Your neighborhood is Purdy, isn't it?
The entire CBRA area.
Yeah. So I'm assuming once they hit South Old Woodward, they're going to use commercial streets in Birmingham. I don't know how else to say it. And you understand, Mr. Reagan, we have no jurisdiction on the parking assessment district concerns that I'm not saying you don't properly raise them, but they need to be raised at the city commission, and that is going to be studied.
My comments are primarily for the public record, so that at least they're on the record.
Yeah, I understand.
They haven't been a part of the record.
Yeah, that's fine. I understand that. I think once the cars get to South Old Woodward, RH can't control where they go. They could go down to George and swing into your neighborhood, but most likely they're going to head towards Big Woodward if they're not residents of Birmingham. If they are residents of Birmingham, I don't know where they're going to go. Maybe they'll go to Lincoln. Or maybe they'll go to Maple. But I think the valet proposal keeps them off Purdy. I think that's a huge improvement And it frankly keeps them from circling around South Woodward to, or South Old Woodward to Big Woodward and looping around, and that just creates excessive traffic. So I think having the cars picked up at the valet entrance or the underground entrance is the appropriate solution. That's my only comment. But I understand your concern. You've made it many times, and it isn't lost on me. Anything else from the board? Okay, anybody else from the public? I don't see anybody else, but
I would just ask Jamil, who's with our IT department, to make sure there's no hands raised. We can't see any up here
all
on
right,
the Zoom.
go ahead. We have somebody else in the public who wishes to speak. Identify yourself, come to the microphone.
No, we do not have anybody else.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have somebody else live.
Crazy.
We are live here. Thank you. I'm Dr. Alam, and I'm just here to learn more about, been getting involved in the city. I was, last year before the pandemic, I was hoping to serve in a cable casting board. Being a resident and a proud Birmingham dad, I'm here to just introduce myself. And I wish that what development is going on, that will be fully benefiting our city, our future forefront, and absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. No one else from the public to speak, and no one else. So, board, if you look at recommended resolutions, there are, and we need to deal with these separately. I would like to deal with the special land use permit first. There are two suggested points, so the chair would entertain a motion with respect to approval of the special land use permit, if somebody would like to make that motion.
Okay. I would make a motion to approve the special land use permit for 394 South Old Woodward and a portion of 294 East Brown Street for
This is a recommendation.
a recommendation. Now, is this for the economic development license or not?
Yes.
It is. With two conditions. The applicant must comply with the request of all department, and number two, I think if I'm right, the applicant is required to execute an agreement with the city for the use of an economic development liquor license with a special land use permit.
And the recommendation above is that the planning board recommends approval of the special land use permit as the intro.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for the motion? Second from Mr. Jeffries. Any discussion at the board?
I would just say that in rereading the regulations and thinking about the history that we've been through, that Kelly indicated, this is exactly what we were trying to achieve. We were trying to make sure that we were able to bring a building of this scale that would, in this case, require or want to have a liquor license, and we've got the mechanism for it. It's about mechanisms and process, and we've had an extensive discussion, but I think it's the sort of thing that demonstrates that by having this tool, we can actually bring a building of this nature to fruition.
Any other comments from the board? To the public, anybody in the public wish to speak on the liquor, on the special land use permit recommendation? And I would simply mention that ultimately the special land use permit must be granted by the city commission. So where's just a recommendation? Okay, let's call for a roll call vote, if we could, please.
Robin Boyle,
Yes?
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Bert Kosek,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Jason Emmer,
Yes.
Lucy Merman.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, you don't have final site plan, but you got a liquor. It's a start.
Wine and a
Okay.
little bit of beer.
Yeah. Okay, I think now we move along to final site plan and design. The original recommendation numbered 9 in total. I think we've reduced that down to 7. I mean, just that comment that I think we should, on what is old number 4, which is now number 2, on landscaping changes for the proposed adjacent site, I think we should modify that to say that it would be subject to administrative approval, if that's acceptable. So with that note,
Well, and then, Brian, don't we also have the, well, I guess it's implicit on the cutoff fixtures?
I think that's covered.
I guess if we approve this, it does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already covered. We would approve the non-cutoff fixtures in item 8, which is new 6. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion, I guess, as old items 3 through 9 as number 4, new number 2 as modified. Is somebody who want to make the motion?
I'll do it.
Okay, Stuart?
I might need help. Planning board finds that all the requirements of section 7.27 of the zoning ordinance have been met and thus recommends approval of the final site plan and design review for 300 to 394 South Old Woodward and a portion of 294 East Brown Street to the City Commission with the following conditions. 1, the applicant update the landscape plan to provide species and size details on all proposed plantings, provide material specifications on hardscape items, and obtain a waiver for the required street trees on Danes prior to the City Commission review. For
Number 2.
number 2, the applicant is required to get administrative approval for all landscape changes proposed for the adjacent site. 3, all streetscape elements on South Old Woodward would be required to be consistent with the enhanced streetscape design plan by the city for future construction. 4, the applicant must obtain approval of the police department and/or city commission for any valet operation proposed. 5, the applicant must submit all light fixture and mechanical equipment specification sheets and revised photometric plan that meets all lighting requirements prior to City Commission review. 6, the planning board approves the use of non-cutoff fixtures to enhance the architecture of the building. And last but not least, the applicant must comply with requirements of all departments.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Kosak. Any comments from the board?
I have one comment. Just since this project came in from the very beginning, the preliminary design, and all the way up to even today, the applicant has done every single thing that this board has asked, and I think staff, I guess I defer to Jana on that, but they've basically done every single thing we've asked for, and they've put together a wonderful proposal here, and I think it's great, and I'll be supporting this tonight. That's all.
Well, Chair will just make a comment that it's been a long process, but I think ultimately for the city of Birmingham, a very worthwhile process. I was struck on Monday night with the paucity of positive comments coming from the community, but everybody I know in the community is probably going to shop there. So I probably won't because there's too much wine. But been to the one in Chicago, and it's a great organization, and I think we're going to be thrilled with it. And a part of the city that I think needs enhancement and a little vitality at the south end. So I'll be supporting it also. Okay, any public or any board members?
Yeah, I
Bert?
wanted to add to that. So forget that it's RH for a moment. It's not a large building. We've seen much larger buildings in front of this board.
over time. So at 50,000 square feet, it's not a large building. At a time when construction costs are growing, and I see buildings with attempting to use lower quality products, this building is made of you know, a wonderful palette of high quality materials. You know, there's nothing cheap about this building. The landscaping and hardscaping is an extension of the building. It's very complementary. It's done beautifully. This is an important intersection within our downtown, and for me, it completes that intersection. Currently we have some sort of one-story buildings and some oddly shaped parking lots and odd property lines, and so, this, I think, anchors that corner well. It transitions well from the Daxton down to the forefront. It continues our downtown to the south, and, I think will hopefully help the retail towards the south part of town. So, I just think it's a great project, and even if it wasn't RH, and RH, I think, is, at a time when communities struggle for having good quality retail, this is a draw. This will bring people to this town and will not only benefit RH, but I think will benefit the Daxton and everything else that's within walking distance of the site. So I'm very pleased to support this.
One final comment I would make is I'm appreciative of the applicant voluntarily agreeing to 4 stories. We had a significant discussion at preliminary that we didn't want a 5-story building on this site, and so appreciative of that. And I'm also appreciative of the city commission and agreeing with the recommendation of the planning board for the voluntary, in effect, reduction from a normal D4. Stuart.
Just real quick, I sit in on the BSD meetings periodically, and they're excited about the draw, not only of people, but of other retail. This is one of those things like a Whole Foods or something that brings stuff with it. So the guy who just got the BSD job, his job just got easier.
Yeah, well, maybe. We'll get a vote yet. All right, I'm going to call for the vote. Roll call, please.
Stuart Jeffries,
Yes.
Kurt Kosak,
Yes.
Brian Williams,
Yes.
Jason Emmerich,
Yes.
Nassim Rumen,
Yes.
Robin Boyle.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. Good luck with city commission.
Public? Or we already had public on the motion. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. My bad.
You want to keep hearing from the public? Next, we're going to bring the new chairman back.
Go on.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Chairman.
Thank you very much for all of your time and support, and we're excited. I can see you're excited too, so thanks.
Oh, absolutely. Awesome. Nice job.
Not as excited as my wife.
You were awesome tonight, Rick.
Yeah.
That's the best thing I ever.
Rick, your letters were in the file.
They were, I read them. Word for word.
Let's get the chairman back. Oh, he's back.
Chairman is back. Hey, Bert, let's set this thing in order.
Yeah, good. Give me a call.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Brian took all your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Let us move along. Final site plan and design review, 135 Pierce Street. Philanthropy.
Philanthropy. Wow. Element.
Adorable. Nick?
Just pulling up some stuff here, guys. Even though Stuart can probably see it from his window, but
You probably could.
It wasn't open.
all right. Welcome back, Chairman Klein. So I've got a simple design review application for essentially just a new outdoor dining platform. It's the first of the avalanche of applications we received post-COVID expansion resolution termination. That was kind of a mouthful, but so this building, of course, is located just on Pierce Street, just south of Maple Road. They've been open for a little over a year now, and they're looking to spill out into the street. So in general, it's about 110 square foot platform. It's going to have 4 tables, 12 chairs, and 2 umbrellas. It's going to have a 36-inch metal railing around the perimeter. In general, it's going to be a Trex deck. It's going to have that metal railing, the tables and chairs. The chairs, I'll talk about a little bit, but they're proposed as polypropylene, tables, wood and metal, umbrellas, standard fabric with a base. So this is all permitted in Article 4, Section 4.44. You're allowed to have an outdoor dining platform in the public right-of-way as long as several conditions are met. One, you need to have a refuse container within the outdoor dining area. All outdoor activity must cease at the close of business. Tables and chairs shall be constructed primarily of metal, wood, or a material of comparable quality. And 4, table umbrellas shall be considered under site plan review and shall not impede sight lines into a retail establishment. So I mentioned that about the polypropylene chairs. They're not metal, they're not wood. I'd like if this board would consider at least discussing whether or not you would think they are a material of comparable quality. You can see here I've got a photograph of the style. We just did this for the EM Bistro up north, same material, polypropylene, with a modern design, so it's not just a lawn chair, if you will. It's still a nicely designed chair. The other curious condition, there's a requirement for the advisory parking committee to review the potential loss of this parking space in terms of the entire street and the area, and whether or not we could, quote unquote, afford to lose this space. So that's yet to be done. Long story short, we had some vacations last month that prevented an APC meeting from happening. This month, which would have been maybe even this morning, actually. But so they were not able to get to the APC before, so I've included some language in the recommended motion language to hopefully resolve that. And finally, I wanted to just talk about quickly that same section 4.44 states that outdoor dining is permitted immediately adjacent to the principal use, and goes on further to state that a dining platform may be erected on the street in front of an eating establishment. I note that the parking space is a little bit on what I'll call like kitty corner to Philanthropy, although it's all the same property, all the same building. So something worth discussing, whether or not you choose to consider that as an issue or something you're not worried about is a whole other thing.
Is there a separate entrance to the building to the south of what we're seeing on the picture?
No, so all the entrances are pictured. So you've got one here on the right, a
Okay.
central entrance, and this on the left, the white
And there's
door.
no entrance to that building further south?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, there's also an entrance down below, right?
Oh, there's a lower level. Thank you, Stuart. Yeah. So there's a lower level tenant down the stairs.
Okay.
Yeah. So in general, we did.
Can I finish?
Yeah,
Because we
sorry.
can't see it. Does the parking space that they would be using go beyond the building itself?
No, it does
To the
not.
south? Okay.
So it doesn't overlap any property lines.
Okay.
Well, it's right away, but you get the gist of it.
Yep.
So essentially, we did recommend approval with the conditions that the planning board approves the polypropylene chairs as a material of comparable quality, and that the applicant receive a favorable recommendation from the advisory parking committee. And before we get going, I know I have the applicants on Zoom. They're not here, they're on Zoom. So if you have any questions, I believe that they are available. I don't know why mine, oh, here it is.
Do you know what their name is
It
on the
should-
Zoom?
It should be,
The business name was up there.
The business name is
before.
up there.
Here it is, I saw it.
Oh, well.
Yeah,
They-
upper
they
right.
were up there.
Upper right.
Corner.
Oh, yeah, they are. Okay, yeah, so Mark or Rua, they'll come to you with questions if they have any, but I'm available for
Let me
questions
see
as well.
somebody's
so.
thumb.
Yeah, we'll start with Mr. Boyle.
Context. How many of our decks are provided by establishments that one would not normally consider providing meals? I'm not very familiar with this store. I've been in it. I spoke to the new owners. I looked at what they're doing. And I came away, pleased that they're there. But I don't see it as a meal place. But here we are, a deck coming out into the street for what would be a place you'd buy their produce and maybe get a cup of coffee or a soft drink or something at the same time. What else do we have in the city that's got a deck to do that sort of thing?
I would say just perhaps Commonwealth. I'm not sure if Commonwealth serves meals per se, or do they?
Oh, absolutely.
They do now, they didn't when they
And
started
they
out.
were serving meals as I walked past tonight. Funnily enough, that's the route I took to check Commonwealth out, and Sushi, which was doing great, was almost packed on the street. But when you got over to Pierce, the toast deck is there empty at night, taking up parking spaces and not doing diddly squat. That's an unfair thing to say, but that's my concern.
Sure. So it's,
Canel's Patisserie used to be also on Hamilton, and they still have outdoor dining in their new location, and they just serve baked goods, coffees, etc. Not full restaurant, not full meals.
so the answer is nobody. Really?
That's my point. Thank you.
Mr. Jeffries?
So, in getting ready for our next topic, Paris has got 17,000 cafes, sidewalk cafes, and I bet you half of those are coffee and crepes, so I don't think we have one, but I think there's places that have similar things. My comment, I wanted to ask, is there a place where we have two decks that butt up? Is Ely's and...
Ely's the street side.
Is that one? Okay. And you said it's 110 feet. Are they taking up the whole, I thought our parking spots were 180 by ordinance, or are these 17?
So I'll
by
let the applicant talk a little bit, but we wanted to make sure, because there's that space there would be that space in between toast and their deck, that they wanted to not take up
Okay.
too much space and in effect render that middle space kind of awkward and useless.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's why they kept it a little smaller.
And the 6.5 doesn't go all the way to the far edge of it.
Yeah, it doesn't stick out into the street per se.
Well, what are their hours to?
So I didn't get those. I'll have to ask the applicant.
We'll get the applicant up here to explain maybe their business real quickly for us. I think that would be appropriate. Mr.
Can you
Coz-
go back to the photograph and while you're doing that, just a comment, it would be good when we look at these to look at it in a greater context. To see the entire block and how it, I remember Astrons complained at
Yes.
some point because of whatever. And, I've heard from, I think it was Bob Gibbs that, every parking space generates, $100,000 in revenue for, I'm making that up, but it's worth something to somebody. And, so I can't see the greater context. Well,
He's going to do street view.
right. So, but my question to the civil engineers on the board is,
Nice.
there's
Nick.
go, yeah. So it looks like the whole street is,
It looks like an art
we're
fair.
losing all the parking. So why is there a yellow stripe? I know there's an alley. Is that,
Sightlines.
why is that a no parking zone?
It is to do with sight lines in and out of the alley.
So is that a quote-unquote standard, and where do you begin to measure the alley? Is it from the north face of that building? And I just wonder, can that thing scoot? Can we pick up a parking spot? How often is that alley used? Who used it? No, and no.
No,
No, there are standards.
no,
I don't
no,
remember,
probably
but
not.
it's like
Strike
20
everything I
feet.
said.
And
There are
engineering also
triangles
said
that you,
truck turn
site
too. Truck
triangles
turn
and
was a
such.
factor.
I was talking
Car
about.
stands.
That one spot's gonna be pretty popular.
Other questions?
Yeah, I got one more.
Stuart?
Is there, do you know anything about we're trying to activate alleys, they happen to be on an alley that's going to get redone next, right? Is there any width or any ability there to do small thing, or is it too narrow?
Not much room. It's very narrow.
Especially because they're right on the corner.
Yeah.
And then there's a curve right not too far in as well, so.
We know at Dick O'Dowd's engineer required 19 feet turn radius, and there's definitely not 19 feet.
I would like to see, is the applicant available to just come forward and perhaps tell us briefly about their business and how they plan to operate?
How do we see this?
Philanthropy.
Can we see them?
Yeah. No, can't see him.
Well, I'm asking them to turn on their camera. There you go.
There they are.
Hello. Hey,
Ah, we've got that. Oh, hello. Wow. All right. On three screens. Cool. This is the first person.
Dynamic duo.
Wow.
Well, welcome. If you could do me a favor and just introduce yourselves, and then perhaps just briefly tell us a little bit about Philanthropy, or pardon me, Philanthropy,
Absolutely.
and what you plan to do.
All right, Philanthropy, so to plant good. So my name is Rua Francis, I'm chef and owner. Our concept is very unique. It's actually the first of its kind worldwide. It is a plant-based dessert and cheese bar where we create everything from scratch. Everything is cashew or tree nut based. So our experience is you come in and indulge, it's tapa style, small plates of delicious dessert and cheeses. And we also have a zero-proof bar or sparkling beverages that are non-alcoholic, because health is, food is art and medicine is our mission. So completely zero-proof bar. And we're excited to expand and go outside and kind of offer an experience where it's an extension of the indoor.
Okay, and what sort of hours of operation?
Currently we are 12 to 8 p.m. 12 to 7 p.m. on weekends, and we're 12 to 6 p.m. During the week from Wednesday to Sunday. The vision is to expand these hours and actually offer extended menu offerings. The one hurdle that we're kind of working through right now is staffing, getting everyone trained, and kind of allocating where we want to kind of focus on.
And how many seats do you have inside now? Do we know?
Yeah, about 16 currently, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add earlier, I know there was some commentary of maybe just being, coffee and maybe a small dessert. There certainly is more to that. There, as mentioned, there is house-made cheeses and pairings that go with that, and tapas style. But there are other food items that we introduce from time to time.
Yeah.
There's mac and cheese, a bolognese that my wife prepares that are delicious, I'll add. But we certainly have been talking about other menu items and expanding the menu as we look to expand the hours as well.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board for the applicants? No? Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public that would care to comment at this point? We have no public here. Well, I shouldn't say that. Miss Allen is here. But as far as those online, I do not see any hands going up.
Nope.
All right, let's bring it back to the board. Board discussion.
I have a question. So it's a chicken and egg thing, like the planning board and the board of zoning appeals? So are we making a recommendation, and then it goes to the parking, whatever they're called, to
Advisory parking?
advisory parking, and should it go there first and then come here, or doesn't really matter, but it's here first, right?
It's here first. We usually run it by them for their comments and review.
First, normally, and they didn't have a meeting
Usually first.
first,
But
okay.
there's nothing in the ordinance that requires that.
Okay, so if it gets approved here, it still goes to their board and they have to approve it, or
Right, that's one of our conditions,
they
right?
they do? Okay.
There's sort of alternative suggested motion language, and it deals with the chairs, right?
Yeah, I wanted to give you an option so you didn't have to fumble with the language. It's either you approve the chairs or you don't. So I gave you two approval motions. One, if you choose to approve the polypropylene, and one if you would rather than switch to metal or wood.
I know you're trying to get rid of plastic at your house.
So if you don't like that, let me know.
He's gonna give you some chairs. I'm going to make a motion if I could.
Well, I don't know, I think a couple of board members might have some, I'm looking at faces and I'm seeing some deliberation going on right now. And we will get back to the applicant in a moment, I do promise. Is there any other discussion at a board level about the appropriateness of the space or the furniture or anything about the?
I guess I have one comment, and Nick, maybe you pull up the Google Street View again. Like, actually, this one shows it wrong. There's only one space there. There isn't current outdoor dining space in that second spot for somebody else. Is that correct? Right where that?
No, that was, when there was outdoor dining, there was only for a COVID
That was a COVID
expansion.
outdoor dining.
Yeah, so this was only approved for COVID that is not there, is not regular.
Okay, so if we take the next space for this, there's going to be a space in between these two. Is that a fair statement right there?
Yeah.
Where
Yes.
Instead
Yeah.
of Volvo or whatever.
Man, the pressure would be on.
I was trying to understand that,
Yes.
and I get it now, and I don't know if I have an issue with it or not. It just seems a little odd. That's all. But I don't know if I have an issue with it or not.
Well, look, I kicked this off, and let me stay with it for a little bit more longer and talk it out and see if there's any views. And the idea of activating the street is very important to us. It's what's really been our lodestone, our guiding light for 20 years, and so I'm fundamentally supportive of it. But I think scale matters. And scale here is very small scale. It's a couple of tables. It's the opportunity to buy their very nice products, come outside and eat them quickly. It's not to, sit down and have a meal or get served. This is a store where you're encouraged to dabble with their. They use the term tapas. It's not really a tapas, but you get my point. Is that the sort of thing that should be taking up our street, a parking space in our street? I'm conflicted. Sure, in other parts of the world you get all sorts of seating, but we've organised it in such a way that we take out a parking space on a street. We build a deck. We put we wrap it with iron. We bring in chairs. We put up umbrellas, and we do it, in a very organised way to serve a couple of, small cakes, plant-based cakes, or plant-based cheese, and all the rest of it, which is fine. I'm just conflicted, to be blunt.
Mr. Jeffries.
It's not a deck, but if you look at roast, Birmingham roast, they don't, nobody really goes there for a full meal. You can get a sandwich or something, but, I drive by there every day. And there's people out there. There's people, and I can see that deck being used similar to this. You're out there, you got your computer, you got your cup of coffee, you might have a little bit to eat. But, with that stretch there with toast, being after 3 o'clock, not being activated, at least these guys go a little longer. I think that whole street there from Merrill to Maple, I think just having something. I mean, yeah, I don't like losing a parking spot, but and if there was any way to have a few tables and maybe not as many on the sidewalk, but we just saw the picture. That's a tough spot. So,
Yes, doesn't work.
yeah, I guess I'm a little more inclined to try it out. I hate losing spots, but I mean they can't do the alley. They can't do in front. How can we? You got a huge deck next to them, and these guys can't even have a little one. I mean, I have a hard time.
Mr. Kozik.
So I thought I heard that the hours may change, but I'm just thinking of when I so you have 2 parking spaces there, right? Currently?
Three.
So you're gonna have, is it?
It's two.
Well,
It's 2.
two there, but I thought the one.
No, that's the new condition.
Right, so one's gone, now you have one. You have one, parking space that those are tough to get in and out of, by the way. But when you talk about activating the street, you know, if I walk past something at 9 o'clock on a Friday evening, or 9:30 or 10 o'clock or something like that, if a business is closed and you have a vacant deck, it's almost works the reverse. It almost looks like somebody's out of business or something like that. So, you know, the typical, these things came about along with bistros, right? I don't know if we had outdoor dining before we had bistros. Maybe we did somewhere, I don't know. But, so a bistro has 65, is it? So, you know, much more than 16. I don't have a problem with the outdoor dining, you know. I know they have logistical issues because, you know, if they had 3 tables up against their storefront and, you know, it seems like that's sort of more appropriate from a scale standpoint, but, so I guess I have some concerns about losing the parking space, having an odd, like, one left over, you know, between 2 things, and having a deck that might be, not being used, during, you know, much of the evenings and whatnot, so.
You already have a deck that's not being used to the south. in the evenings.
Exactly, that's what made me think of it.
Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah, I think we've got a paradigm here that activation of the streets only matters when you're off work. I mean, I work in town, I'm here every day. The activation during the day is a bigger problem than at night. And so to have places that you can do that during the day and have that, I mean, Toast is, I mean, that's killing it during the day, you know, for those,
Yeah.
you know, hours before. So, I do agree on getting in and out of the spot. I mean, this will put panic on any teenager learning a parallel park. This would be a dare. But, you know, the deck doesn't take up the whole spot, so you have maybe a little buffer. I have a hard time not giving these guys a chance. I mean, this is a unique kind of little business, the only one in the world. I've never seen one, so I got to believe it. Giving them the best shot they can to succeed.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I understand the concerns, I do, but, you know, frankly, not every restaurant in this town needs to be white linen. Not every restaurant needs to have liquor. There are places that, you know, you mentioned others. Seems like it's a unique, to say the least, eclectic place. I have a hard time saying that just because Ely's and Street Side got there first, or they serve liquor, that they don't qualify. So it's a little awkward, but I'm supportive of the space itself. I will go on record, and Mr. Kozik is correct, as saying that I'm not a big fan of plastic in any sense, because I don't think that it's a 50-year material. But 2, even though polypropylene is probably the cleanest plastic you can get, it's still plastic. And I'm just not a fan. But that's my 2 cents. I would not approve those personally. You know, you can have your space, but give us a good chair, is what I'm saying. Other opinions?
Vegan
Thoughts?
chair.
Vegan chair, plant-based.
I was talking about the spaces earlier just because I didn't understand it, and that one in the middle is going to be quirky, but I agree with everything Stuart and Chairman Klein just said. Like I don't really necessarily have an issue. It's still a legal sized parking space. It's going to be odd. It's going to be weird to get in there, but that's next door. I think you've got to give these guys a chance with what they got out front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
You interested in a motion?
Yeah,
Go for
yeah.
it.
Quick question. So if this gets approved, is that for the next 50 years, or is let's say it becomes a, I don't know, a safety issue or something, or it you know, does this get looked at every year? Is this a special? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Jenny, you can nod yea or nay, but any outdoor dining setup, you have to apply for an outdoor dining permit every year. So I imagine if, for example, if trucks are hitting it every day, or if the police are having problems with it, they would not sign off on said license, and they likely would not be able to put it back out.
Right.
So there is that yearly check, I suppose.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the design review application for 135 Pierce Philanthropy with the following conditions. One, the applicant must submit revised plans showing dining chairs constructed of wood or metal or obtain a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals. And two, the applicant receives a favorable recommendation from the Advisory Parking Committee in regard to the parking and traffic conditions surrounding the subject site.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Jeffries. Any conversation at the board? Is anyone in the public, the applicant's got their hand up. I never did go back to them, so I'll let them speak. Can we unmute them, or? There we go.
Yep.
All set, guys?
Yes.
Hi, hello again, sorry, we lost you. Okay, so, I understand the concern about the chair, but I'm an artist myself, and I spent a very long time looking for a chair that aesthetically fits, the vision and, it translates our brand aesthetics. Understand, I'm not generally a fan of plastic, but when I saw the chair and learned about the designer and learned about the design aesthetic and just how gorgeous it is, I was sold on it, and it actually comes in 2 colors. And I have them all in my house right now.
And you're not invited.
Yeah, I'm apparently not invited.
So just an FYI, they come in 2 colors. One gorgeous blush pink that is so elegant and elevated, all matte. And the base is actually beautiful metal, and it's all matte, all one color. So I have it in the blush and the white, and it goes beautifully as an extension of what we have inside. Of course, we have wood and
Do we have
marble
a picture of the chair?
the inside before. But it was very difficult to find a chair that can withstand the weather that we have outside without having to go through a lot of damage and waste. Run through changing them constantly, and I'm kind of looking for cost efficient, but also keeping the high standard aesthetic quality that we go for, and comfort. It's extremely comfortable. It's beautiful. Again, it wouldn't have been my first choice ever, but the design, the beauty of it, and the reviews, and obviously we have them, so we have tried them, and the pink is gorgeous. So it's white with the stripes black and white, and then we have a pop of that light blush pink, which is beautiful. So we have gold elements as well that will be kind of beautifying the space outside.
So somebody might steal it, but it's not gonna end up in the ocean. Pretty sure.
No, probably not. It
All right.
could recycle. I think it might recycle.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
But I understand the concern for sure. I understand.
Potential consideration. And probably the thing to add is, metal chairs, in fact, the ones that we currently, not currently, that we used during the COVID expansion for some outdoor seating. Those are, metal chairs, they can be metal, but they can be pretty basic and cheap and uncomfortable as well. So.
Those were they're designed ergonomically to be very comforting, and they just really
Right. Okay. Well, thank you.
And they're in my house.
No mas.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else from the public that,
This could be a second time in the history of the planning board where the guy making the motion votes no.
yeah, seriously. It's a thing called quitting when you're ahead. It seemed like nice people. Is there anyone else from the public that, I don't see any hands going up? So bring it back to the board. We do have a motion that's on the floor that has been seconded, so we do have to vote on the motion.
Yep.
So,
Call the question.
we'll call the question. We'll do a roll call so we can pin it all on me if you like.
No.
No, we'll do, all those in favor of the motion as presented.
Aye.
Aye? That's 2.
So this
All
is-
those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
All right, motion fails. Do we have another motion?
Sure.
Guys are terrible.
Make a motion to approve
Such
the design
pushovers.
review application for 135 Pierce Philanthropy with the following conditions. The planning board approves the polypropylene dining chairs as a material of comparable quality, and 2, the applicant receives a favorable recommendation from the advisory parking committee in regard to parking and traffic conditions surrounding the subject site.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Jeffries. Conversation on the motion. to the public.
Just real quick,
We'll bring it back.
you know, there's, if you think about it from a percentage standpoint of activation, I'm just thinking about restaurants.
It's going to pass.
I know, no, but I just want to make this for the record. Places that are open for breakfast and lunch 7 days a week, we had no problem with, but it's, and we got a bunch of them that are only open for dinner, they, 5 days a week. So from an activation standpoint, this will be at the top, I mean,
You
up in
just
the upper
changed my
echelon.
vote, so it's good that he could speak.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm going to do it for the record, one opposed. So we are 6-1, congratulations.
You got outvoted again.
I got outvoted again. Congratulations, good luck,
Good luck.
and thank you.
So much. Y'all invited to come and be there for the first day opening.
Except me.
Make sure he sits in the plastic chair.
Test the plastic chair.
But you need a big one.
I'm not coming because I can't get a glass of wine. Let us move along to our, let us move along and try and have some decorum here. Study session. Let's get back into the study session.
Yeah, very good.
I know. Public notice signs. Nick, was this you?
Yep,
Hey, Nick, before you start,
yep.
at the city commission meeting at which this issue was raised on the RH delay, I thought the city manager suggested that we have transitioned from what I would call very general signs to now very specific signs, and I thought he wanted us to review in particular that issue. Am
Vice
I wrong?
versa. We have very specific notice signs now, so you have to get a sticker and apply it.
Yeah, no, I know, that's my
And
point.
he wants to go back to the
Yeah,
general signs
that's
we
my
had
point.
before.
Yes, my
That's
point.
what's in the packet.
Yes.
Okay.
So I did try to get that across. So this
It's
could
a
be
little
as,
confusing.
Yeah, I was
It's-
confused.
It's not great. But like you said, we were directed a long time ago to change him up.
Right.
That's ancient history now.
He's gone.
You said it. So there's really only one place that's mentioned in Article 7, and that's under site plan review, section 7.29. So what I thought would be easiest if I would just scratch it from that section and add it to the general section at the beginning
Hey.
to try and make it apply to everything that requires a notice sign. Because if you recall again, 46947, I had a similar issue
Right.
in which we argue with actually Mr. Ratner about, well, the ordinance says that you only need it for final site plan, technically, so we're trying to resolve that as well. So in this, most of this text here is the same that I've placed in 7.01 general.
Yeah.
But what I've done to try and make it general again is, shall give notice of the date of hearing of any land development application. So I went back to, that's what our old sign says, was this project is subject, or this property will be subject of a land development hearing. So I tried to bring it back to just a general, something's happening here. Call us if you have questions.
Okay.
So did anybody notice anything odd, or
No, I,
where that might not work in our favor? Are we shooting ourselves in the foot with
We
any of
had
this?
no problems with it before.
Yeah,
didn't we used to have a symbol that you could?
yeah, QR code?
Yeah, stupidest thing I've ever
We still
seen.
do, but nobody uses them.
You
now,
gotta,
but-
you gotta be within 6 inches of it, right? That's my thing. I've actually sent our city manager some things. I sent our last city manager some things. These signs are just overly complicated.
Right.
If you go to Savannah, Georgia, which is pretty a nice town, and other towns too, they have a sign where they just write on the damn sign. They just have some blinks on it, and somebody takes a Sharpie and writes, building, they're removing 6 parking spots, looking for variance on window glazing. They just write on there. And then, craziest idea, meeting to be held, City Hall, Wednesday, 8 o'clock. You don't have to get out of your car. You don't have to even slow down, and you can tell what's going on. So, I mean, there's a confusion on, did I get the right sign or all of that? But how about for the 20,000 people that might be, might be interested in this? We need to make it easier for them. This QR thing, I do it occasionally. then it sends you to a list, and then you got to drill down that list and find that item. It's just the stupidest thing. So this is my outdoor storage or gates on the dumpster thing.
Right. Ms. Kozik.
I mean, so I haven't seen these signs you're referencing, but.
See if I can find them.
But I'm amazed sometimes when people get something, people call me, it's like, oh my God, I got something in the mail. What's going on, So they're confused. How many phone calls do you want to get because you're dealing with somebody who wants to remove a tree or something? I don't know, as opposed to building the next 555 building or something like that. So should there be some clarity, and does the Sharpie thing work, or, I don't know. If it's general, it's going to put more burden on.
I'm telling you what, it
you.
worked perfectly fine before when it was general. Most people already had an idea what was going on.
Why
and
did
they
we
didn't.
switch?
Well, we don't need to get to that history, but, I mean, it seems to me if we write down, even with a Sharpie, we're still back to the same point that they might have the wrong sign.
Right.
Because then you gotta switch the sign out.
that's a separate-
But that's the whole
yeah.
issue that we've been
That's the issue.
throwing to us right here.
Well,
And I get your point, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Mr. Jeffries, I hear what you're saying, I do.
I think
appreciate
it would be ridiculous for us to try to solve that specific aspect of it and leave this other part, alone. I mean, it's just, we've had more noticing issues. The other thing is it a state law that it's 15 days?
The state law requires public notice be sent out by mail to property owners and tenants within 300 feet. It does not require the sign. Birmingham requires the sign.
Okay, here's another thing.
didn't
Our
always,
meetings are 14 days apart. We got 15 days in
know.
this. If you move it to 13, guess how many problems we'd solve? I mean, this happens to us constantly.
Sure, yeah.
It just gets tricky if you
It
have
does.
different notice periods for different things.
Yeah.
Make them all 13
And just for the
days.
record, I was informed on RH that, the sign that was in the window, the cleaning crew moved.
Right.
So, I mean, things
Stuff
happen.
like that happens. I'm in favor of going to a more general sign, as you indicated, or going back to a more general sign.
I am too.
Back to the old days, which we're familiar with.
I am too.
I think specific is not a good idea. And how many people called you when the signs were general?
Very few.
How many people called you before we had signs? Probably more.
More.
Yeah.
More, yeah.
So the only thing I noticed that wasn't in the language, and I don't know that I expected it to be here or somewhere else, and that's why I'm asking, is where the sign is placed or how it's viewed, like it must be, it must be visible from the street, or,
We say it has to be visible from the public.
and where do we say that?
I don't think we
I
do.
think it's in the notice sign rental form.
The notice form, right, but
So
not the
I guess I'm
ordinance.
just wondering if we're saying that a notice sign shall be posted in a conspicuous place. Why don't we just say a notice sign must be posted where we want it posted, as opposed to relying on the form? Am I wrong?
Well, it
or-
does say a notice sign shall be posted in a conspicuous place on the subject property in this text. Is that what you mean?
That's what I mean, and we would just
Oh.
say in a conspicuous place, but then someone puts it in a place they find conspicuous, and Ms. Allen gets up here and we're like, well, it wasn't on this, this side or that side. I would just tell, Bert and I are in the industry, Chase, tell us where you want the sign, we're gonna put the sign up. So why don't we just tell people where we want the sign?
Well, what we tell them is visible from the public right of way.
Why don't we say that?
Good. I like that.
That's good. Change the language.
So
From
are we
A, how
agreed?
about?
Shall be
A,
posted in a
'cause what if you
conspicuous
have two?
place visible from the public right
A.
of way.
A,
Right. A, not
or
A.
both?
Visible from A.
public right of
A public
not an active
right of
via.
way. Got it.
And we have a simple sign that doesn't differentiate between historic plan review, site plans, SLUPs.
Right.
Right.
Well, you can
CSI.
list the type, as the language there,
No.
you could, but that makes the sign too cumbersome.
No, just keep it public.
Just keep
Simple.
it simple.
Yeah, land development. That's
No,
the
just
word.
land development, because that's what our old signs had.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
we have about 40 of those guys in the office.
Certainly keep the phone number in, or a phone number.
Oh, yes.
Change
Definitely.
it to Nick's.
Stewart's.
Well, we can all agree, let's change
No,
the
you know what?
process.
This is something that's going to be easier for a developer, harder for the 20,000 people who pay for this stuff.
Well, so that's a great point, Stuart. Let's talk about that for a quick second. I mean, because you're right. I mean, we don't want to just blow away the idea that we're trying to hide, we're not trying to hide something from the public with these signs. So what is the solution that that you have here, which to me seems like doing exactly what we're doing now, but doing it by hand instead of
Yeah,
putting
so
it
the
out.
sign itself would be, that you could have one sign. You're just filling it in differently. You're filling it in, and you fill it in.
Then we get complaints that it looks messy and we don't allow handwritten signs on
Get,
businesses.
learn good penmanship, easy to solve. But people will know what's going on. They don't know. It's ridiculous. I mean, this system is, if you didn't know better, you would say it's designed to confuse people that would otherwise say, oh, so this building's they're asking for an additional floor. I can see it on the sign. I don't have to get my decoder out, find a parking spot, go up to it, take the picture, then hit the thing, and on my phone, go through this list of ZBA, which sometimes is right and sometimes not. Sometimes it's got yellow on it. Sometimes the old ones still have yellow on it. Find this thing, and then, click on that and find out. That's crazy. I mean, do we want people to be able to understand what's going on in the city and have some kind of transparency? You don't put up a generic sign saying, guess what? This could be knocked down, or they need it, they want to have 3 smaller windows. I mean, the same, that puts everything at either urgent or not important at all. I don't know, whatever, at the same level.
So, well, real quickly, Mr. Boyle, the ordinance itself does not say one way or the other what type of sign we're talking about. The ordinance itself simply is cleaning up the language, and in this case, we think making it a little easier, right? So might I suggest that we could push the ordinance along and perhaps, if we feel appropriate, a recommendation on the city staff and city manager look at what that sign, the language on the sign is,
Yeah,
but
there's a generic one.
that wouldn't mire us into it, because it's not an ordinance issue at this point.
The design of the sign is
Right.
not an ordinance issue.
Right. Mr. Boyle.
I would suggest that the most important thing is to give the member of the public who wishes to know more a telephone number and a website. And if they wish to ask for more information, they contact staff in the city, so that the sign should have the fact that something is about to happen, and if they want to learn any more, then they can make the decision to call or go on the website. That's what we need to have in it. If you start to put all the details in, Stuart, you are driving down rabbit holes.
They do it in cities all over the place.
They may well do it in cities all over the place, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's correct.
So every time I see a green and white sign, I've got to go through this whole exercise to find out if it's important or not.
Yes.
That's not right.
But
When
then
you
you
can-
have-
if you
when
live
you can
within
write 5
300
words on
feet.
there saying, it's going to be a 20-story building, wow, I do care about that, or they want to have one less window.
But supposing
That's a
it's-
different level.
Supposing it's a whole lot of things.
We put up a lot of these
yeah.
signs. They're all
Supposing
over.
it's like 6 things that's happening in one
Restoration
site.
hardware.
Yeah, right.
Right,
Zoning,
yeah,
special
yes,
land
there-
use.
historic review, there's multiple designations of tasks that need to be done. And we can't fill in a form, we got messed up with doing it that way. Tell people something's is going to happen or might happen, and get them to the right people, not somebody who's scribbling on a bit of paper.
I totally disagree on that one. I think your time would be saved. I really do. I mean, you could just, try to have it one time, write it down. Now, so for the bigger stuff like that, like Northville, they just put up they have bigger signs. For bigger projects, they have bigger signs. They have it all, they actually just print them. The developer pays and they print a sign. But I think the key thing here is who are we trying to help on this?
Public. The public.
I think you make excellent points. Let me make a suggestion similar to what I just did, is that I think we have ordinance language that we can push forward to a public hearing, because it has not been and will not be that specific as to what the sign must contain. The ordinance language is here, cleaned up. We can then send these minutes along with that, and we can discuss it again at the public hearing if you like, to have it minuted so that Mr. Marcus and Jana and staff, Ms. Ecker can talk about what that sign should read. I mean, that might even involve some of the commission members who watch this that are very interested in public input and feedback, and maybe it ties into that, to banging the table somehow. I don't even know, but for us to, instead of trying to solve it here, let's get that concern minuted because it's valid. Let's get the language cleaned up because it has nothing to do with your concern, and then see if we can push both of them forward to to Mr. Marcus and to the commission for resolution. Because you're really talking about what is included in the noticing, not the ordinance that talks about the fact that you have to notice.
I think there's two things, that on the sign, and the other is if we don't have a reason for 15 days and we meet 14 days apart, make it 13 days, that would help. I mean, you could just think back through your mind, how many times somebody would be able to get at a meeting and not have to carry over for a month. So,
And most important, don't hate me for this. Let's get rid of the clip art tree and the Hunter Boulevard squirrely things and just say the city of Birmingham.
Yeah, well,
Let's get the green
Come
chair.
on, I've seen it other places that way on the letterhead.
We could put the green chairs.
Okay.
Signs should be,
so, yes, Ms. Acker, please.
I just had one question, Nick. I know I was on vacation last week at the end of the week, but you had also recommended changes to this section on appeals go to the BZA. Section 7.29, where you struck the language on hearing on review and notice and you moved it to a different section so it would apply to everything, but then you changed to state that any applicant for site plan or design review, approval or adjacent property owner agreed by a decision of the planning board, design review, or historic design or district commission shall have the right to appeal to BZA, but doesn't the historic district get appealed to the SHPO?
If it's a historic property, there are cases in which we review buildings that are in the historic district that are not historic.
Okay,
So I wanted to,
so we should
include
probably
it.
just clarify that
Okay.
so that it's.
It's a really good point.
All of them go there.
I'd like to just push this
So-
forward. We have too much to do.
or historic district commission for all non-historic reviews or something.
So what motion are you looking for? Schedule a public hearing?
I think that's what you're asking for, correct, Nick?
Yeah, I didn't put it, of course, but yeah, if that's what you're,
Jana, what's our schedule looking
ready
like
if you're
we
ready.
want to try and get this done?
Well,
August?
as you know, Chairman Klein, we had discussed,
Yeah,
August
I
as
know.
well. We
know.
were anticipating or hopeful that we would just bring this to a public hearing in August,
Do it.
in the hopes that we can just get
What's
this
the
one
date?
checked off.
Date?
August 11th.
So I'll make a motion that we schedule a public hearing on amendment of Article 7, Section 7.29, site plan review, new B, and 7.01, Article 7, 7.01B for August 11th,
With changes as noted.
with changes noted tonight.
Motion, Mr. Williams. Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Boyle. Any other conversation? I'll take it once to
say as a matter of principle on this, because I think we should do it all together, but still respect everybody here. I'm going to vote against it.
Is there anyone from the public that cares to comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Hey,
Nay. Motion carries. Let's move along to our next item. Study session on outdoor dining.
Not a small one.
Okay.
Not a
Is
small
that
one.
why Kelly's here?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that, just to wrap up the public signs, I think that's actually an excellent bang the table suggestion. Although, I'll take the emails, Jana. But we could find out almost exactly what the public wants to see on these signs. So, moving on to outdoor dining, I thought this would be the long one, so maybe we flip-flopped. But in general, we know a lot of the history. It's been discussed over and over, really since 2020, late 2020. Ultimately, recently on June 23rd, this board put together a list of goals that they would like to see in this overall outdoor dining review process, in which we are reviewing the entire ordinance with a few key points on enclosures and expansions. So it was quite the long list. So it was hard to decide where to start necessarily. So we thought maybe a high-level approach would do well to kick things off. Also, in general, it was kind of hard to search this because it's hard to separate outdoor dining and COVID right now in terms of regulations even cities like Detroit, when you Google outdoor dining in Detroit, all you see are COVID-related outdoor dining articles, notes, and like kind of new legislation and rules. But we thought it'd be cool. I looked up Open Table's annual list of 100 best al fresco dining.
That was a good
That was
idea.
real cool. That was a great one.
Just to look through, so I looked through websites, pictures, just to see what the world considers good outdoor dining. So I made several observations, kind of related to what we've been talking about. In general, one, some sort of overhead covering, very common. I included several pictures here that you could see, but there are obviously way more. I'd have to say that the good old-fashioned table and umbrella was the most popular, but that's not to say that I didn't see plenty of awnings, plenty of pergola-type structures, interesting fabric uses, shade sails, all that types of stuff. There were several rooftop patios. I know we've had that conversation before, and we've got at least one here, possibly two in the future. Lots of heaters, lights, fire tables, kind of accessory things to outdoor dining. For comfort, it seemed. Kind of apropos, I saw a lot of different types of dining chairs, not just metal and wood. Some wicker, some fabric, plastic, lots of plastic. What I didn't see were a lot
Pardon me
of,
for trying to save the turtles. Dan, I'm sorry.
for a lot of full enclosures. I did not see very many full enclosures. I mentioned if they were, it was kind of just like a circumstance of the restaurant where they'd be a little below grade, so they've got a little bit of an exterior wall, or they're kind of sandwiched into a corner of a restaurant, so they've got technically two walls where the building is, but nothing really fully enclosed. Also, the majority of outdoor dining patios had a lot of greenery, a lot of plants hanging and on the ground. We get that sometimes here in Birmingham, but we don't have any ordinance language requiring it necessarily. So we also saw a lot of public-private dining areas, but the design of such were consistent. So you didn't see different tables and chairs on private versus public, or anything like that. So bringing it down a little bit closer, I tried to find what people thought were the best outdoor dining restaurants in Michigan. So a couple of lists there, one by Pure Michigan, one by MLive. Some of the same observations. Lots of shade type structures, lights, fire tables, rooftop dining, greenery, all that types of stuff. So even more local, we always look at other cities' ordinance to kind of get a reference for what people are doing around us. I found it actually quite interesting that almost everywhere I looked, there really wasn't anything as in-depth as we have now, which we were actually trying to make more, I don't want to say complicated, but more in-depth. Berkeley, Royal Oak, Plymouth, Rochester Hills, and Lake Orion were the only ones that I really found that were even worth including, to be honest with you. I looked all around Detroit, Ferndale, and Arbor, nothing really there. Maybe we have Kelly here, so she seems to agree, so that makes me feel a little better. So it was rather hard to bring other examples of specifically ordinance language to reference. So not sure if that's going to be a worthwhile venture. So we may have to just kind of go into uncharted territory, and we should probably be prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm. We are. I mean, if I can just say that I looked at the photographs, and what struck me was that almost all the photographs were of outdoor dining, not all, but most of them on private property. That they were part of the restaurant. And I'm struck by, the Mexican restaurant that's opened up at Troy. What's it called?
Remember the name?
Madonna's or?
I mean, they've got a nice little outdoor dining area, but it's on private property. It's adjacent to the sidewalk, but it's private property. Like 220 or so many of the ones that work.
Yes.
We're dealing with a different animal.
Yes.
Right? And even the Detroit ones you've got here, which, by the way, I think are awesome photographs.
Yes.
I mean, Lewin, that's on the roof.
Yeah.
And the Hort in Grand Rapids has to be on the roof,
Yes.
I think. You get my point? That
Yes.
we're dealing with
Yes.
a really in-your-face discussion about the street,
Yes.
not even the sidewalk. To be, I mean, I know you relate, Stuart, to so much European stuff, but in Europe, a lot of them are on very wide sidewalks or on squares.
No,
You know, which are they flow out from the cafe, you know?
But how much have we done in the last 6 years? Every time we redo a street, the sidewalks get wider. Not as wide as the Champs-Elysees or something like that. But, I mean, we're going more that direction, so.
Sure.
That was one of my comments, is I wanna look at Europe. It's not a one-for-one match, but there's elements of there that we should look at, just for ideas.
And that's a fair point, and I did observe that. Again, not as easy to find necessarily, because maybe they just don't take nice pictures of those areas and put them on the internet. It could be that simple. But, so I guess just to wrap this up, because we're getting close to its life anyways, generally we thought we would like a little more direction potentially on where to head next. I noted 4 bullet points, specifically ordinance language related. We just want to know, if possible, if you could tell us either tonight or soon, do you want enclosures? And included in that,
That's a loaded question.
we've been advised by our city attorney that either way, we should define what an enclosure is. So that's going to come in ordinance language in the future.
Walls and ceilings.
2, should expansions be allowed? Not just onto or in front of businesses, but to the sides? Because that's something the city commission wanted us to look at. Do we want them to, with permission or without, of neighboring properties, do we want them to be able to do that? 3, do we want to get restaurant owners involved early? Do we want to create a survey early and have that guide our discussion, or do we want to have a discussion and bring them on to kind of understand what we think kind of later down the line? So I want to get prepared for that. 4th point, because we kind of came up dry with some of the ordinance searches, would you like us to go further? Do you want us to look at other regions, the Chicago regions, the Minneapolis, St. Paul regions, to try and find any other ordinance? It's just going to take some time. Happy to do it. Just wanted to make sure you found it worthwhile before we actually take that time. And the 5th, I didn't include this, but I'd like it if you guys could have Jana ask for a budget amendment to send me to each of these outdoor dining establishments to enjoy
There you
a
go.
meal
Now
for
you-
the true experience.
Now you're talking. Now
So that I can really bring some good.
Paris first. Yeah.
We'll send you to
So
Ferndale.
for Stuart requested I go to
Clawson.
Europe, so
You get
it's a
Clawson,
short-
the bus trip. You know,
short 2 to 3 week excursion. Not a big deal.
Give them a round trip bus ticket.
All right, well, first,
let's answer
Oh,
these
who said
questions.
anything about round
First,
trip?
let me say, Nick, I appreciate the effort you put in to put this together. I really like the high-level start we're doing here. We didn't dive right in. I appreciate it, so well done.
Okay, good.
I will say that before we get into any other discussion about deciding tonight about enclosures is like so premature, like we don't
Okay,
even know what
all
an
right,
enclosure is, let alone whether we want them or not. We need to figure out all that out, right? The other thing, just to Mr. Boyle's comment, and then I will open it up for everybody, is the other thing I noticed is the few spaces that were in public spaces, public streets that you could kind of tell, most of them in Michigan, quite frankly, the pictures at least. The dining area was adjacent to the building. There was a clear pedestrian path. There was nothing in the street. And there was no instance of the pedestrian path bifurcating the restaurant space. There were not chairs on either side. We're essentially sharing the public walkway, the public way with the waitstaff.
When you said nothing in the street, what did you mean by that?
No decks, no parking spaces in any of the photos that we saw. And no, I'm not talking about in Birmingham. I'm saying in general, the research.
That's what they.
So I think these are things we probably need to discuss, in my opinion at least, as we work our way through this. But, yes?
I forgot, may I say one more thing? Jenna mouthed it to me. The city manager's office did do a bang the table survey on this. It was to residents specifically. You could tell there were a couple of restaurants owners in there as well. But we have some feedback in general. Most of it related to the COVID-19 expansions and how they felt about them.
Okay.
So we're kind of talking about that as well. And I would say that out of the 165 people participated
Since yesterday at 3.
since yesterday at 3.
Wow.
Less than 24 hours.
Awesome.
95 people provided, written comments. The vast majority were positive. They thought that the expansions were super, with the, duds here and there.
Right.
But
And that
those
jives
will
with
be
next, that
available.
jives with next door as
Yeah.
well, if anyone's
Yeah.
been following it.
Hot and cold. Well, that'll be available at the next the next meeting
Good.
we'll have, but
Good.
it's out there.
And if we could put in a plug for it, if you or anybody else watching the meeting wants to go to to the Engage Birmingham website, that's where you can go and take
Perfect.
the survey.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The more the merrier.
Absolutely.
So yep.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I got the email, but I didn't go to it. But if I had, would I have seen the responses so far?
I
Is it
don't
is it
believe so.
alive? Is it going to inform me as well as?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
As administrators, we can do data and analytics basically and get reports on it and break it down,
But
but
it's
I
not-
don't believe the public
It's,
can.
it's not a living survey, which you can, nowadays you can see what people are saying as you do it. Okay, thank you.
As we, and I promised myself, maybe the others to not make this more complicated than it is, but one of the things that, a deck on the sidewalk or whatever, or railing mount is one thing. Once you start building canopies and structures and other sorts of things, at what point does it trigger the building code in terms of structural and uplift and, the energy code? I wonder I look at the Dico Dow, that deck, and man, it feels close to the street to me. Like, I feel like I can high five people, so I'm curious how, that's not MDOT, that's the city of Birmingham, but are there some standards or some guidelines or something that relates to, I'd like to have some of that information to help inform what we do here.
Well, I can tell you, at least from a fire department standard, there's issues too with sprinkling and fire suppression, the more enclosed you get.
Right.
So a lot of those things have come up,
There are also issues with clear,
clear egress.
just
clear
down the
aisle.
street with
Yep.
the truck itself.
And I wonder, the thing at Canal was there yesterday, I think it was there yesterday, and it's gone today.
Because
gotta be-
all of the COVID things
Right,
had to be
right,
removed.
but it must have been, now that's the only way they could survive, but the cost of some of these things are substantial, and if you're saying, yeah, it's there for 6 months and boom, it's gotta be gone, and, at what point is there gonna be, pressure to, I built, so, again, I don't wanna dig too deep into the weeds, but I do wanna understand the building code. I've talked about even the plumbing code. The whole bistro thing, I thought was, it's a beautiful day, who wants to be inside, come on out. But if you have 65 inside and 65 outside, I don't think that was the intent, or maybe it's not, I don't know.
I guess what I'm hearing is you'd like
Yeah, it's part
Nick
of the
to
research.
maybe even talking
Don't have to go to Paris.
to the building official as
Research the
to,
building code.
They've got
When
building
does the
codes
code-
in Paris too.
well, the building official can tell you right here locally in Birmingham, when the code kicks in and what that means to the physical structure itself, right?
Yeah, and
So
I
we need a
think you
good
did
sense of
include in your list to solicit feedback, at least from DPS and BSD, but
Absolutely,
happy to add engineering, building,
please.
happy.
Fire.
And to your
Yes.
point, fire, to clear width of the street, traveled way, distance, shy distance away from, because we did eliminate the shy distance in that new streetscape we just did.
Yeah, I'll have police in
Okay.
there too.
What is shy
Might as well run the full gamut.
I'll explain it later. It's the reason why the parking spaces seem a
Oh.
little closer to the street than maybe they used
That's
to.
the kind,
Mr. Jeffries?
Yeah, so I read through all your stuff, and then I've got comments or some thoughts of, different things on each of your 4 points. So one, the first one, does the planning board want to see enclosures? I started thinking about, on some of the aspects of this thing, and I agree, we do need to define this. When is it a wall versus a windbreak? One place you should look at, it's not the same temperature, but San Diego has some very interesting stuff where they'll have glass here. They have little fire pits that are hard piped, that are there because of the cool nights. And when is it rain and sun protection versus a ceiling or a roof? We saw that on recently. When is it, trying to make it a little more comfortable versus true HVAC, climate control. And then I also put a note on here on retractable awnings. I started looking at pictures in Paris, and I think, the reason I bring it up is when a town's got 17,000 cafes, probably have a few ideas and different things there. And I noticed a lot of them had retractable awnings, and up under them, they had the strip of the heat thing. Put the awning out, and then you got some heat. But a lot of their cafes, as I was looking, and I haven't been there in a few years, were just up against the building and just two tops. So, you're not getting a ton of seats, but you're getting some activation.
Yep.
And I think you feel a little better when you're up against the building. At least your back is not going to get, blasted. So your point number 2, should restaurants be permitted to extend in front of neighboring properties?
Yes.
I just had a thought of what if you, on this renewable thing like the outdoor dining, you get permission and it can only run for 1 year. It runs on that same cycle. You get, if the person next to you is. Somebody new comes into that business, they wouldn't be straddled with that except to the end of that term. So the third point, should a survey be created? I totally agree with the engage thing. Also the BSD, we should engage them and Sean Kammer and all. I know they talked a little bit. I missed the meeting this week. They met at Phoenicia on Tuesday, I believe, but I think they'd be a good resource. And then the last one, should we do a broader ordinance search? Some of the things, and I see your thing. I can imagine it's going to be difficult, but what kind of heat things? Who was I? I was talking to somebody in town today about this. I'm trying to get other people's opinions, and they said, we got all these, one guy's got the tall one guy's got the heated tables, and there's it starts looking pretty junky. And then when you push it out in the street, look at all the stuff we've done on our streetscape. One kind of bench, one kind of light, 500 kinds of decks and heaters and stuff like that. So, and then the last thing is, and I've never seen this, but I wonder if you're in a parking spot, can there be a mechanism if we decide we want to have stuff where it matches a little bit more? You put a receiver in there where that receiver would allow you to put in an umbrella or a post for a shade sail or whatever you land on, if you land on it. But that receiver is there during the season, and then they can be pulled out and capped,
What do you mean by receiver? Like a
Well, like the bollards.
sleeve and the
A sleeve, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like the
But are you
bollards.
talking in the street or in the sidewalk?
It would be in this, probably the street, and then you'd have a hole in your
Put a little
deck
metal
too,
cap on
but
it
you'd
when
be able to put in a significant umbrella without having to do anything crazy. So, and that's a few points.
Interesting stuff. Other input, thoughts? I think Mr. Jeffries hit it for me, at least. I would suggest that you look in your ordinance search, expanding it to other areas, and maybe even areas that might not necessarily seem to be perfect fits, but that are more kind of, I don't want to be trite and say Winter Village, but, there are communities where people are entertaining outdoors in this country more often than maybe we're used to. Boulder or Aspen Vale, I don't know. Maybe there's some information there, or some standards or whatnot that might be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, I'd also recommend that if you've got the time, that rather than going to individual communities, go to one or two of the national associations, the Downtown Association, who, they've got their finger on the pulse that's across the country as a whole. There are about 3 or 4 different organizations that I can think of that operate nationally.
I sent an article to Jan, I sent 3 to him, but one of those is an association that was talking about post-COVID dining and what's going to happen now, but I think it was one of those associations.
I'll look them up and send them to you if I can remember what they are.
Perfect.
It's great.
So I can't imagine there would be the perfect place for this in Birmingham, but somebody was telling me about Northville, which I've never experienced what it was like during COVID, but I think they shut down their main street.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And-
It's fantastic.
And people said it was fantastic, but if my restaurant's not on Main Street, did you prioritize people there? Like, where's our Main Street? Where would you put it?
True. Fair
So,
point.
MDOT.
That was social districts that were created by the MLCC, and Ferndale has them. I think Royal Oak might even have them, I'm not sure.
76.
but can you imagine a place in Birmingham
Right.
where you would shut down?
We talked about it internally here, do you make Shane Park a social district? Do you make, one of the main streets a social district? It wasn't something that the city was interested in proceeding with
But
at that
could
time.
Phoenicia then, they don't front on Shane Park, could they go set up one of these
Pop-up?
things, a pop-up and do, so.
Rabbit holes. Okay.
Told you, we'd
Okay.
get in the weeds.
One quick thing that wasn't in the note, but I want to kind of touch on. The commission seemed to me at least to be very open to the concept of year-round outdoor dining. And I know we allow it now, but it's under kind of a,
It's very limited.
yeah. Does the board have any concerns, or do we want them to research that any further? Is that the direction we think we're heading as far as,
I definitely do, and I will say at the last BSD, not the last one, the one before I was at, Tom Marcus, somebody asked him about having the year-round issues with snow removal, and he didn't have any issue. He said there's no issue with the snow removal. It's the way they remove the snow, it wouldn't be an issue.
and we'll get DPS to confirm all of that and everything.
I think
But-
it should be included in the discussion.
Absolutely, it should, yeah.
Right. My concern, at what point does it become a Four Seasons room, if you will?
Well, I think that's what we have to work through, man.
Right.
The idea that
I mean,
we're
if
not
somebody
going
wants to eat outside in January, like, go for it,
But I'll tell you, I mean, just
But if
taking
it
a
means isinglass and,
Yeah.
I'm just simply taking a step back to say that
Yeah.
we need to look and decide whether or not we're going to have 2 seasons of outdoor dining, one where there's certain things allowed and one where there's others, or is this just 12 months, where everything's allowed during that 12 months, and we go through your valid points and come up with those standards. We need to get our heads around that.
and the whole storage of furniture thing, is that working or not? Or they stick it around the corner and it's?
I think it looks worse when you stack it up.
I agree.
We have a member of the public with their.
Yes, and I will get to them in just a moment. Okay, so let us open it up to the public. Just listed as iPhone. Can we, I think I know who this is, but can we?
Hello, Joe.
Hello.
Hello, can you please identify yourself and provide your input? Oh, there you are.
Hi, I'm Joe Bongiovanni from Market North End and some of the other restaurants on the North End. How are you guys?
Good, how are you? What can we do for you today?
Well, I just thought I would kind of start to weigh in on the subject, I guess, in hearing some of the dialogue that you've all had this morning or this evening and the different direction that you're taking some of the questions. I will tell you, I have an outdoor dining structure that is year-round, and it is on private property. The Market North End patio is, and it's accessible from the restaurant very easily, which makes it relatively easy to service and serve the guests on it and keep them in a comfortable manner. And the same thing occurs for the staff members that wait on that deck in that area. I think that a lot of what you've talked about so far starts to relate to the expanded outdoor patios that we had this past year, which are no longer. And I'm not sure that a detached deck in the wintertime has a substantial value to an operator. I mean, there's a lot of subsequent issues that you have to contend with in terms of coming inside and outside to get to that deck. So I might suggest that you first decide if you're going to give up parking spaces for decks anymore, because that seems to be a bigger contention for everybody in the city right now, is those parking spaces. And then from there, you could decide. I heard, I think Mr. Boyle talk about, or Mr. Jaffers talk about the decks being, or the service being close to buildings and such. That seems like that's a pretty important element, to be right near an entrance or an exit, so that you could get in and out from your service staff situation. Those are just a few comments I could tell you from practical. I certainly would be glad to answer any questions that anybody else had with respect to our experience. That's about it.
Great, appreciate your input. I don't know if anybody has any questions now, but please stay focused on this, as I'm sure you will. We'd love your input along the way. Excellent. Anyone else from the public? I did not see any hands. Ms. Allen, no? Okay. So thank you, Board. I think we're in good shape. Nick, do you got some positive direction?
I'd say so.
Yeah, good.
I think the rough plan internally was to bring this back in August. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough time. Would you really like to see it in August again?
Well,
Maybe perhaps even just an update?
I would like to continue to keep this moving. And so whether it's, we'll get to you in a quick sec, whether it's the first meeting in August or the second meeting is really kind of, we can talk about that. I would almost rather you come with bits and pieces done as opposed to the whole assignment done.
Yeah.
Just keep this moving.
I'll have it done.
So, Ms. Ecker.
That's just what I was gonna say, something, maybe we have somebody from the building department come
Exactly.
and have them talk about the energy code, the building code, and what the repercussions and ramifications
All the design
are,
requirements,
fire department, et
yes.
cetera. Because then we're not gonna go copy all these sections out of the building code for you, but at
No.
least then we can have a debate,
Yeah,
discussion.
take it piecemeal,
Right.
but keep them moving.
Love the idea.
Great.
All right. So let's move forward. Any communications? Any administrative approvals?
I just have one question. It's not an admin even.
Yes.
Easy. I tried something new, and I did a lot of hyperlinks as opposed to pages and pages of attachments. Did you like it, and should I keep doing it? Is that more convenient?
I just assumed they didn't work. No, but I like it if they did. I'll click on them next
I
time.
tested them a number of times.
Yeah, no, I just thought they were
Berkeley, if I
just
click
in
on
blue,
Berkeley,
but
it
that's
takes-
great.
Yeah, okay.
I
'Cause I get tired of the 68 pages of attachments that are,
Yeah,
I don't know. This way you can kind of pick and choose
200
what you
printer.
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it's great.
Just making sure.
Thank you.
In case you wondered
It
why
was
your
new.
packet was so small.
It was small. It was nice, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Good.
Draft agenda for July 28th.
We have preliminary site plan for a new building at 460 North Old Woodward. Final site plan and special land use permit for Adachi for their amendments.
Where's
for
460?
Junior League building.
Oh,
We have a final site plan and design review for Clover Hill Cemetery for changes to their admin, I think it's their admin building. And Birmingham Roast design review, outdoor dining as well, same as Adachi.
So a full plate. Okay.
3 items, 4 items.
5.
Five. Back to 5. We're back in
where's
public.
Jack's Car Wash?
Funny you should mention them, because they sent me an email yesterday, I believe, with updated plans. With the expectation that they would be on July, well, the next meeting from today, July 28th. And they dropped off hard copies, and I just sent them an email this afternoon saying, sorry. You requested to be postponed till the 28th, however, that's not what the planning board did. You have to go back in the queue, so let me know when you're ready. And I haven't looked at the plans yet, they just came in, so now I haven't received a response back from them since they realized they're at the back of the line, so.
Okay.
And you're already stacking things up for the August meeting?
Yes. Quite
And
frankly,
we're getting
September,
inundated with outdoor
November.
dining permit requests as a result of COVID every day.
and frankly, Board, I mean, Ms. Ecker and I are working frankly to try and stack them a bit, because we know the master plan's coming back in the fall, and we'd like to get as many of these things kind of spaced out so that we can dive back into that when it
Do we need
comes.
to schedule a special meeting to get rid of these things?
I would say at this time, in July, no, and plus July and August are hard anyways because of everyone's vacations. But at this time, I would say no, but maybe September, because September, there's a lot of holidays too. There's a lot of Jewish holidays, so we only have, I think, one meeting in September. So we might want to consider adding a meeting in September,
Yeah. Okay, we should look at that.
working around the holidays
Yeah, we should do that.
schedule.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna need one or more. When we get into the fall, we're gonna be busy again.
We are.
Remember 10 years ago when we canceled meetings? Those days are gone.
All right. Any other business?
Because I need to move to a next seat next time, because every time the camera's at Nick, I felt like, what is that? And it was my balding head.
I was wondering why I kept getting these bright lights.
Talcum powder on your head next time.
I don't think this is 10:30 and no one's
I'll lend
watching.
you some.
All right, with that said.
Nice to see you all again.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Very good.